Chapter 1894. This sudden turn of events caused Yi Xian to frown. Just as he was about to ask the undead emperor what had happened, he was astonished to find that the undead emperor was lying flat on the ground, her bones trembling. Yi Xian's expression changed when he saw this. At this moment, the undead emperor suddenly said in a trembling voice, "Little fellow, kneel." Her voice was filled with terror. Kneel? Yi Xian shook his head. A person could die, but their backbone could not be broken. Actually, the main thing was that kneeling like this was too embarrassing. It was better to hold on for a while. Next to the sea of blood, Blood-Eye slowly licked her candied paws with a calm expression. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before walking over to Blood-Eye. Blood-Eye turned to glance at Yi Xian before continuing to lick her candied paws. Yi Xian was about to speak when the sea of blood in the distance suddenly parted. Immediately afterwards, a bloodied person slowly walked over. When the undead emperor saw this bloody person, she buried her head in the ground and couldn't stop trembling. She was terrified to the extreme. Blood-Eye looked at the bloodied person with a calm expression. At this moment, the bloodied person walked over to Blood-Eye and bowed slightly. "Second miss, the patriarch has fallen." Blood-Eye stopped licking her candied paws. She looked at the bloodied person and said, "Good." The bloodied person said in a low voice, "Second miss, before the patriarch fell, he said that you might become a threat to the family in the future. So, as soon as he died, he had to get rid of you." Hearing this, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. Damn it. Did this mean that the father was going to kill his daughter? At this moment, he suddenly felt that his father was not bad. There had to be a comparison. Blood-Eye glanced at the bloodied person. "You?" As she spoke, she suddenly flipped her right hand. In an instant, a white light appeared above the blood-covered man's head. The blood-covered man was greatly shocked. "Seamless Dao, you've always been hiding your strength." Boom. Before the bloodied person could finish speaking, he was directly wiped out. Xue Tong took out a stick of Tunghulu and continued licking it. "If I didn't hide my strength, would that old fart have let me live until now?" Yi Xian could not help but glance at Xue Tong. He had always felt that he had taken advantage of Xue Tong. 2 candied haws for 100,000 soul crystals, that was a huge profit. But at this moment, he suddenly realized that this little girl was not stupid at all. While he was tricking others, he might also be tricked by others. Right at this moment, Xue Tong suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian. "I'll take you with me." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, "Where to?" Xue Tong licked his candied fruit, and then he said, "Nine Heavens City." Yi Xian frowned. "Where?" Blood-Eye said, "My former home." Yi Xian's expression immediately changed. "You want to kill your way back?" Xue Tong looked at Yi Xian. "My father is dead. Shouldn't I go back and have a look?" Yi Xian spoke in a low voice, "You should go back and have a look, but it has nothing to do with me, right?" Xue Tong frowned slightly. "Aren't we friends?" Yi Xian's expression froze. Xue Tong continued, "Since we're friends, then isn't my father your father as well?" "Of course, your father will be my father as well. I'm very fair." Yi Xian was dumbfounded. "Is that even possible?" Xue Tong looked at Yi Xian. "You don't treat me as a friend?" Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, "Of course we're friends. But why are you taking me with you?" Xue Tong said, "Digging graves." "Oh, no, I mean going back to observe mourning." Yi Xian broke out in cold sweat. This fellow wants to go back and dig graves. Damn it. She's leading me into a pit of fire. Xue Tong suddenly said, "Let's go." She turned around and left once she finished speaking. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Is it all right if I don't go?" Xue Tong stopped and turned to look at Yi Xian. "Can you contact your father now?" Yi Xian was speechless. Xue Tong said, "If you can't, then let's go." She turned around and walked towards the sea of blood. A threat. A blatant threat. Yi Xian fell silent for a moment before he turned to look at the undead emperor. Senior, do you want to go with me? The undead emperor hurriedly shook her head. No, no. Little brother, you go. Take care. Yi Xian was speechless. A moment later, Yi Xian and Xue Tong disappeared into the sea of blood. The undead emperor let out a heavy sigh of relief. She was finally free. In the distance, Yi Xian and Xue Tong walked on the sea of blood. Xue Tong walked very slowly as he licked his candied fruit. Yi Xian suddenly asked Xue Tong, "Why are you taking me to that city of the 9 heavens?" Xue Tong said, "We're friends. You said that friends should share blessings and misfortunes together. Is there a problem?" Yi Xian was speechless. Xue Tong said, "Don't be afraid. It's no big deal." Yi Xian was speechless. "Of course you're not afraid. I'm so weak. I won't even know how I died if I went to dig up a grave with you." He wanted to run, but he knew that he couldn't escape at all. Xue Tong's strength wasn't something he could fight against right now. At this moment, the sky in the distance suddenly trembled. Yi Xian looked at the sky and saw that it had suddenly split open. Immediately, a figure floated out. It was a woman. The woman wore a long white dress and had a long tail. Her appearance was somewhat similar to Xue Tong's. Xue Tong glanced at the woman before continuing to lick his candied fruit. The woman in the white dress looked at Xue Tong. "What are you doing?" Xue Tong said, observing filial piety. The woman in the white dress stared at Xue Tong. "He's already dead. This matter ends here, all right?" "Ends?" Xue Tong grinned. "It's just begun." As she spoke, she turned around and pointed at Yi Xian. "Let me introduce a friend I just met. His name is Yi Xian." Yi Xian was speechless. "Why are you introducing me?" The woman in the white dress glanced at Yi Xian and said, "Such a weak friend?" Yi Xian was speechless. Xue Tong licked his candied fruit. "Is there anything else?" The woman in the white dress looked at Xue Tong. "Don't seek death." With that, she disappeared. Xue Tong continued forward. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, "Aren't you going to reconsider?" Xue Tong took out a candied fruit and passed it to Yi Xian. "Don't be afraid. At worst, I'll just die." Yi Xian was speechless. Not long after, Xue Tong brought Yi Xian to a stone step. At the end of the stone step was a huge stone door. The stone door was 300 m tall and extremely grand. Xue Tong said softly, "We're here." Yi Xian glanced at the stone door. There were 4 large words in the center of the stone door, 9 Heavens City. Xue Tong suddenly walked up. At this moment, a man in black armor suddenly appeared not far away from Xue Tong. He was about to speak when Xue Tong suddenly pressed his right hand down. Boom! The man in black armor was directly obliterated. Instant kill. Xue Tong looked up and smiled. It's time to destroy the 9 Heavens clan. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly stomped her right foot. Boom! The stone gate collapsed with a loud rumble. At this moment, countless powerful auras suddenly appeared in the surroundings. At the same time, a woman in a white dress appeared not far away from Xue Tong. It was the woman in the white dress that Yi Xian had seen earlier. The woman in the white dress looked at Xue Tong. "I gave you a chance." Xue Tong said disdainfully, "Gave me a chance? Big sister, who do you think you are? Are you even worthy of giving me a chance?" As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly flipped her right hand. Boom! The expanse of space where the woman stood started to seethe. At the same time, an expanse of white light appeared above her. The expressions of the experts here changed drastically at the sight of this. Seamless Tao, the woman's expression changed drastically as well. The Seamless Tao. You've actually surpassed the Seamless Tao and attained the Seamless Tao. Tong chuckled. Are you surprised? Are you surprised? As she spoke, she suddenly pressed down with her right hand. Boom! The white-robed woman's body instantly turned illusory. She was about to be sent into the seamless void. The white-robed woman was horrified. She opened her palm and a small golden bell appeared in her hand. In the next instant, the small golden bell transformed into a golden light that enveloped her. Under the envelopment of the golden light, the white-robed woman was protected. Tong licked his candied fruit, and then he smiled. So it's the divine bell. Congratulations on becoming the patriarch of the Nine Heavens clan. The woman in the white dress stared fixedly at Tong. What exactly do you want? Tong smiled, to collect a debt. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly tapped forward with her finger. An array of blood-red light instantly smashed against the divine bell. Bang! The divine bell shattered, and then Tong pressed down lightly with her right hand. A powerful force enveloped the woman in the white dress and was about to strike her into the seamless Tao. However, a powerful aura suddenly appeared here. Bang! Crimson Eye retreated 10,000 feet away without a sound. Yi Xian gazed towards the distance and noticed that an old man had suddenly appeared behind the woman in the white dress. All the experts of the Nine Heavens clan bowed when they saw the old man, Patriarch. The Patriarch. Yi Xian's face fell when he heard this. So she's still alive. That little girl, Tong, was tricked. The Patriarch of the Nine Heavens clan gazed at Tong while a complicated expression flashed through his eyes. You've actually attained the seamless Tao. Tong put the candied fruit away and said, Old fellow, you're still alive. The Patriarch of the Nine Heavens clan had a complicated expression on his face. I'd intended to let you live, but unfortunately, you refused to change. Since it's like that, then I have no choice but to end you with my own two hands. As he spoke, he raised his right hand slowly and pressed it down lightly. In an instant, the expressions of the experts of the Nine Heavens clan changed drastically. Bloodline pressure. The Patriarch of the Nine Heavens clan intends to crush Tong with his bloodline. Tong's figure suddenly started trembling violently. The powerful bloodline pressure was on the verge of crushing her, and she couldn't resist it at all. Because it came from her bloodline pressure, and she couldn't do anything unless she emptied her blood. But that was clearly impossible. Meanwhile, she suddenly appeared by Yi Xian's side, and she gazed at Yi Xian. Are you a friend? Yi Xian was about to speak when Tong suddenly said, Lend me some blood. As she spoke, she patted Yi Xian lightly with her right hand. Boom! In an instant, blood spurted out of Yi Xian's mouth like a fountain, and under Tong's control, Yi Xian's blood began to boil. In an instant, an extremely terrifying bloodline pressure swept through the Nine Heavens realm. In an instant, the surrounding spacetime was shattered, and even the eighth layer of spacetime was annihilated at this moment. At the same time, the experts of the Nine Heavens clan felt their blood boil. Then, all the experts of the Nine Heavens clan knelt on the ground and trembled. Bloodline submission. This was the submission of one bloodline to another bloodline. Yi Xian was petrified at the sight of this. Is my bloodline so terrifying? His face darkened as if he had thought of something. Damn it. His bloodline has definitely been suppressed or sealed by his father. This bastard. Chapter 1895. Bloodline pressure. As soon as Yi Xian's bloodline pressure appeared, even the Patriarch of the Nine Heaven clan's bloodline pressure was instantly suppressed. The Patriarch's eyes were filled with disbelief, and he spoke with a trembling voice. What bloodline is that? Tong turned around to gaze at Yi Xian, and he grinned. That old bastard is asking you what bloodline it is. Yi Xian fell silent. He knew why Tong hadn't killed him and had even brought him here. His bloodline. Tong wanted to use the energy of his bloodline. Meanwhile, Tong chuckled. You seem to be unaware of how terrifying your bloodline is. Yi Xian nodded. Tong gazed at Yi Xian. Then you should thank me. Because I can unseal a portion of the power of your bloodline. As she spoke, she turned around to gaze at the patriarch of the Nine Heaven clan. If it wasn't for that trace of ancestral blood within you, then killing you would be as easy as crushing an ant. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly waved her right hand. Bang! The space where the patriarch of the Nine Heaven clan resided fell into the void, and he was just about to attack when Xue Tong pressed her right hand down once more. Rumble. The patriarch's body collapsed into pieces, and only his soul remained. The expressions of the experts of the Nine Heaven clan changed drastically when they witnessed this scene. They wanted to attack, but they were completely suppressed by Yi Xian's bloodline, and they didn't even have the ability to resist. The reason the patriarch of the Nine Heaven clan hadn't been able to fight back was mostly because of the energy of his bloodline. Yi Xian's bloodline had suppressed the trace of ancestral blood within him, and he couldn't bring forth his full strength without it. The patriarch of the Nine Heaven clan who only had his soul left stared fixedly at Xue Tong, unfilial bastard. Are you trying to kill your father? Xue Tong licked her lips and said, I'll send you off in advance. As soon as she spoke, she suddenly swung her fist. Bang! The patriarch of the Nine Heaven clan was blasted into nothingness. The faces of the experts from the Nine Heavens race instantly turned pale. The patriarch was gone. Meanwhile, Xue Tong turned to look at Yi Xian and smiled. The feeling of patricide isn't bad. You can give it a try as well. Yi Xian thought for a moment, then said, If my father is as strong as your father, perhaps I can try. Xue Tong smiled, then turned to look at the woman in the white dress. The woman in the white dress stared at Xue Tong without saying a word. Xue Tong waved his right hand. Boom! The woman in the white dress was directly erased. Blood Eye smiled and said, Follow me. As soon as she finished speaking, she walked off into the distance. The space around her started to turn illusory as the experts from the Nine Heavens clan started to disappear. Under the suppression of Yi Xian's bloodline power, the experts of the Nine Heavens tribe had no way of resisting. Of course, this was because Crimson Eye was strong enough to unleash the power of Yi Xian's bloodline. If Yi Xian used it himself, it definitely wouldn't be so terrifying. Meanwhile, Xue Tong spoke abruptly, You don't seem to know how formidable your bloodline is, right? Yi Xian nodded. Xue Tong glanced at Yi Xian, Do you know how terrifying your bloodline power is? Yi Xian shook his head. Xue Tong smiled faintly and didn't say anything else. Yi Xian asked, How terrifying is it? Xue Tong said softly, When I activated your bloodline power just now, it wasn't even 10% of its true power. Less than 10%. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. Not even 10% was enough to suppress the bloodline of the Nine Heavens clan? Did I underestimate my father's strength a little? Xue Tong said again, Your father is very powerful. Yi Xian said in a low voice, Xue Tong, the reason you didn't kill me was because of my bloodline power, right? Xue Tong nodded, You're not an ordinary person. If I kill you, I'll be in big trouble. Yi Xian nodded, So, you chose to be friends with me? Xue Tong glanced at Yi Xian, Otherwise, do you really think I would be stupid enough to spend 100,000 soul crystals to buy 2 of your candied fruits? Yi Xian was speechless. Xue Tong suddenly stopped in her tracks. At this moment, she and Yi Xian were already in front of a large hall, and she looked at Yi Xian, Do you know what this place is? Yi Xian shook his head. Xue Tong said, This is the Nine Heavens clan's treasure vault, and there are many divine items inside. Hearing this, Yi Xian hurriedly said, Let's go in and take a look. Even though he said that, he didn't go in. Instead, he waited for Xue Tong to go in first. Seeing that Yi Xian didn't go in first, Xue Tong licked the candied fruits and said, You're very smart. As she spoke, she walked towards the hall. As soon as she stepped in, a white light suddenly surged over. Xue Tong flicked her sleeve. Boom! The white light was instantly obliterated. Xue Tong looked at Yi Xian, If you had charged in just now, even if you didn't die, your body would have been destroyed. As she spoke, she walked in. Yi Xian fell silent for a moment before he followed her in. As soon as he entered the hall, Yi Xian was stunned. The entire hall was filled with all sorts of divine items, and it was obvious that they weren't ordinary at a glance. Meanwhile, Xue Tong suddenly said, "Every single divine item here is worth at least 1,000,000 soul crystals. There are at least 1,000 of them here, and all of them belong to the Nine Heavens clan. Now, I'll give them all to you." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "You're giving them all to me?" Xue Tong licked the candied fruits. "Yes." Yi Xian glanced at Xue Tong. "Why?" Xue Tong blinked. "We're friends." Yi Xian shook his head, "As if I'd believe you." Xue Tong smiled. "Do you want them or not?" Yi Xian immediately said, "Of course." As he spoke, he put away the divine items. Actually, he wasn't too tempted. This was because he had a super divine item in his body, the Qingxian sword. Of course, these divine items would be of great help to him now. Xue Tong continued to walk inside, and soon, she arrived in front of a stone door. The stone door trembled violently, and then a golden seal suddenly flew out from the stone door. Xue Tong punched out. Boom! The stone door was smashed into pieces. Yi Xian looked at the stone door curiously. There must be some kind of treasure inside. However, when he saw the scene inside the stone door, he was stunned. There was no treasure behind the stone door. There was only a woman inside. Her 4 limbs were tightly bound by chains. Not only that, she was no longer breathing. At this moment, Xue Tong walked in front of the woman and looked at her without saying a word. Yi Xian glanced at Xue Tong, then slowly retreated from the stone door. After a while, Xue Tong walked out of the stone door. She walked to Yi Xian's side and said softly, "The one inside is my mother. She was imprisoned when I was 6 years old until she died." Yi Xian asked in a low voice, "Why?" Xue Tong said, "My mother didn't like my father. She liked someone else. Although she married my father, she didn't have my father in her heart." Yi Xian asked, "So, your father imprisoned her?" Xue Tong nodded, "Yes." At this point, she looked at Yi Xian. "Men are all bad, don't you think so?" Yi Xian nodded, "Except me." Xue Tong looked at Yi Xian without saying a word. Yi Xian blinked. "You don't think I'm good?" Xue Tong licked the candied fruit and asked, "How many women do you have?" Yi Xian said nothing. Xue Tong raised 2 fingers, "More than 2. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then said, "I'm actually a very loyal man, but because I'm too outstanding, many women can't help but fall in love with me. I'm actually very troubled." Sigh. Xue Tong looked at Yi Xian without saying a word, and just looked at him. Yi Xian felt a little uncomfortable being looked at. "Xue Tong, what do you plan to do next?" Xue Tong said, "I want to go somewhere. Do you want to come with me?" Yi Xian immediately shook his head. No, I have other things to do." He didn't want to go with this little girl. He just wanted to find a place to cultivate, reach the 20th phase, and then find a way to unseal the green profound sword. Xue Tong suddenly said, "I can guide you." Yi Xian glanced at Xue Tong. "Do you have any conditions?" Xue Tong nodded. "Come with me." Yi Xian was puzzled. "What for?" Xue Tong said, "To play." Yi Xian didn't say anything. Xue Tong licked his sugar-coated haw, and then said, "If I guide you, you can reach the 20th phase in less than half a year, and reach the Seamless Realm in 3 years. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Xue Tong, are the Seamless Realm and the Seamless Path different?" Xue Tong nodded. "They're worlds apart." Yi Xian asked, "What's the difference?" Xue Tong thought for a moment, and then said, "The undead are the Seamless Realm, and I am the Seamless Path. Do you understand?" Yi Xian fell silent. The undead emperors were the Seamless Realm, and Xue Tong was the Seamless Path. A single look from Xue Tong could make an undead emperor kneel and tremble in fear. Xue Tong said, "Not only that, I can also help you completely awaken your bloodline." Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "Miss Xue Tong, can you tell me where you're going? Why are you bringing me along? Shui Tong blinked, you'll know when we get there. Yi Xian didn't say anything. Shui Tong continued, are you going or not? If you don't, I won't force you. Yi Xian still didn't say anything. Shui Tong continued, if you cultivate normally, you'll need at least a few hundred years to reach the 20th phase. Not only that, but you'll also need a large number of soul crystals before long. But if you follow me, not only will you receive my guidance, but you won't have to worry about cultivation resources. She glanced at Yi Xian as she spoke. Having someone to guide you is completely different from not having anyone to guide you. Do you understand? Yi Xian suddenly said, Miss Shui Tong, I'll follow you from now on. Shui Tong nodded, let's go. With that, she turned to leave, but stopped after taking a few steps. You have to do me a favor first. Yi Xian asked, what favor? At this time, a voice suddenly sounded from behind him. She probably wants you to help her deal with me. Yi Xian turned around, and an old man had appeared not far away. The old man sized up Yi Xian. Is it your bloodline that suppressed my 9 Heavens clan's bloodline? Yi Xian said in a low voice, you are? The old man said, an ancestor of the 9 Heavens clan. Yi Xian was speechless. Shui Tong walked over to Yi Xian, glanced at the old man, and then said, descend with your main body. Yi Xian said in a low voice, can you defeat him? Shui Tong thought for a moment, and then said, even if I can't defeat him, I can still escape. What are you going to do? Yi Xian looked at Shui Tong with a shocked expression, you're not going to take me with you? Shui Tong blinked, I can take you with me, but you have to give me some benefits. Yi Xian. Chapter 1896. Benefits. Yi Xian's expression was quite unsightly because she was actually trying to extort him. Right at this moment, the old man suddenly smiled, don't panic. She needs your help. Yi Xian gazed at the old man, and the old man smiled, her cultivation is the same as mine, but her bloodline is restrained by me. So, she'll suffer a loss if she doesn't have your help. Yi Xian gazed at Shui Tong. Shui Tong licked his candied fruit and remained silent. The old man suddenly said, young brother, can you take a look at your bloodline? Yi Xian nodded. He opened his palm, and a drop of blood essence floated out slowly. The old man's expression instantly became solemn when he laid eyes on it. Shui Tong glanced at the old man and remained silent. A short while later, the old man spoke in a low voice, may I know who your ancestor is? Yi Xian smiled, Senior, you definitely don't know him. The old man nodded slightly, and then he glanced at Shui Tong and said, young brother, you have to be careful. Yi Xian smiled, are you worried about Miss Shui Tong? The old man said, it isn't just her. There are many unknown enemies as well. Yi Xian frowned slightly, unknown enemies? Senior, I've just arrived here and haven't made any enemies, so how could there be unknown enemies? The old man gazed at Yi Xian, there are some mysterious and formidable special powers in the boundless universe. The methods of cultivation of these powers are unlike ordinary people. They mainly cultivate their bloodlines, and they frequently devour bloodlines. Young brother, your bloodline is so special, so you're exactly their target. Yi Xian's face fell. Since my bloodline is so terrifying, why would they dare to look for trouble with me? The old man smiled, do they know that your ancestor is still alive? Yi Xian fell silent. Indeed. No one else knows that my father is still alive. As if he'd thought of something, Yi Xian gazed at Shui Tong, you didn't kill me because you knew my father was still alive. Shui Tong was just about to speak when the old man smiled, of course. Otherwise, she would have devoured your bloodline a long time ago. If she devoured your bloodline, her strength would increase by at least 10 times. Yi Xian sighed in a low voice, Shui Tong, I treat you as a friend. Blood I licked the candied haws, 2 candied haws for 100,000 soul crystals. You're such a good friend. Yi Xian was speechless. Crimson I looked at the elder in the distance. He's trying to sow discord between us. Also, he wants to devour your bloodline. However, he's very smart. Firstly, with me here, he knows he can't do it. Secondly, he's also afraid of the person behind you. I can sense the desire in his eyes. As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian. He wants to devour you too. Yi Xian smiled and said, I finally understand. All of you want to devour my bloodline. The old man smiled and said, You've misunderstood. As soon as he finished speaking, he glanced at Xue Tong before turning around and leaving. Yi Xian looked at the old man in the distance and did not say anything. Xue Tong licked the candied haws and said, It won't be long before news of your special bloodline will spread throughout the universe. Yi Xian was puzzled. Why? Xue Tong looked at Yi Xian. What do you think he's here for? To avenge the Nine Heavens clan? No, his true goal is you. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Just because of my bloodline? Xue Tong nodded. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian asked, Can I devour other people's bloodlines? Hearing this, Xue Tong frowned slightly. After a moment, she looked at Yi Xian and asked, Can't I? The corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up slightly. If others could devour him, then he could also devour others. Who was afraid of bloodlines? At this moment, Xue Tong suddenly said, Let's go. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and left. Yi Xian followed. On the way, Yi Xian was a little curious. Miss Xue Tong, after the 20th stage is the Seamless Realm, and after the Seamless Realm is the Seamless Tao? Xue Tong nodded. Yi Xian said in a low voice, There is only a difference of one stage between the Seamless Tao, but the difference in power is so great. Xue Tong said, The difference between the two is like heaven and earth. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian asked, What about above the Seamless Tao? Xue Tong was silent for a moment. Deities. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Deities? Xue Tong nodded. An existence that surpasses the Tao of spacetime. However, it is only a legend. Yi Xian nodded slightly. Then, he asked, Miss Xue Tong, what universe is this? Xue Tong glanced at Yi Xian. The Seamless Universe, a level 7 civilization. Yi Xian said in a low voice, Have you seen a level 8 civilization before? Xue Tong said, I have. Yi Xian was stunned. Then, he said in shock, You have? Xue Tong nodded. You will see it soon. Yi Xian didn't understand. Just as he was about to ask, Xue Tong suddenly said, Please be quiet. Yi Xian was speechless. After a moment, Xue Tong suddenly said, Someone is following us. Yi Xian looked around. He didn't find anything. Xue Tong opened his palm and pressed it down. Boom! Thousands of meters away, the space there suddenly exploded apart, and then an old man retreated explosively. He retreated for an entire 30 kilometers before he finally stopped. Xue Tong looked at the old man. Ling Clan. The old man said in a low voice, Sir, we have no intention of becoming enemies with you. Xue Tong nodded. I know. Your Ling Clan's target is the little guy beside me. The old man stared at Xue Tong without saying anything. Xue Tong turned to look at Yi Xian. Look, the matter of your bloodline has already spread. Yi Xian smiled. It was your ancestor who did it. He wanted to use others to test me, right? Xue Tong nodded. How smart. Yi Xian was about to speak when the old man suddenly disappeared. Xue Tong said, The Ling clan is comparable in strength to the Nine Heavens clan. It is also a special clan with a very powerful bloodline. Of course, the Ling clan isn't scary. The ones you really need to be careful of are the Jiaxun clan. This clan's bloodline is extremely powerful, and they like to devour bloodlines. If I'm not wrong, they should be investigating you by now. Yi Xian looked at Xue Tong. Why didn't you devour my bloodline? Shuetong glanced at Yi Xian. First, I didn't rely on my bloodline. Second, when I entered your Shao Ta, I discovered some secrets. However, others don't know these secrets, understand? Yi Xian was speechless. Shuetong said, don't think too much about it for now. I can protect you for a period of time. Let's go. 2 hours later, Shuetong brought Yi Xian to a star field. There were many buildings floating in this star field, and it was very messy. Yi Xian looked around. This is? Shuetong pointed at the ruins in the distance. A former level 8 civilization. Yi Xian looked at the ruins in the distance. Among the ruins, a dilapidated hall could be vaguely seen. Other than that, there were dozens of stone pillars that were tens of thousands of meters tall standing around it. Although these stone pillars were tens of thousands of meters tall, they seemed rather small in the endless starry sky. Shuetong suddenly said, do you see that hall? No one has been able to approach it until now. Yi Xian looked at Shuetong. You don't want me to go, do you? Shuetong nodded. Yi Xian's face darkened. What makes you think I can go in? Shuetong thought for a moment and said, let's give it a try. Yi Xian was speechless. Shuetong said, let's go. As she spoke, she started walking towards the distance. Yi Xian glanced at Shuetong before following her. When they were 3 kilometers away from the hall, a shadow suddenly walked out from within it. The shadow walked slowly towards Yi Xian and Shuetong while holding a sword in its hand. The shadow looked at Shuetong and Yi Xian. Stop. Shuetong glanced at the shadow, and then he looked at Yi Xian. You go talk to him. Yi Xian's face darkened. Why should I go talk to him? Shuetong said, I can't. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. Do you think I can? Shuetong licked his candied fruit and said, you can give it a try. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice, you can't defeat him? Shuetong shook his head. I can't. Yi Xian gazed at the shadow. Meanwhile, the shadow said, leave. Shuetong gazed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian gazed at the shadow and was about to speak. However, the shadow suddenly swung its sword. Bang! Yi Xian didn't even have time to react before Shuetong was slashed over 30 kilometers away. After that, the shadow gazed at Yi Xian. The shadow gazed at Yi Xian for a short while before it said, please. As he spoke, he moved to the side and made a gesture of invitation. Yi Xian fell silent. Could I really be the legendary child of destiny? If that's true, then doesn't it mean that I can really beat my dad up in the future? The shadow continued, please. Yi Xian glanced at the shadow, and then he walked towards the hall in the distance. On the other side, Shuetong wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and continued to lick the candied fruit. No one knew what he was thinking. At this time, the ancestor of the Nine Heavens clan appeared not far from Shuetong. In addition, there was a middle-aged man with 3 tails. This person was the patriarch of the Na Shan clan, Naga Qing. Shuetong glanced at Naga Qing but didn't speak. Naga Qing smiled. So Miss Shuetong didn't devour that little guy's bloodline because you wanted him to enter the Divine Spirit Palace. Shuetong continued to lick the candied fruit and didn't speak. Naga Qing looked at the Divine Spirit Palace in the distance. After a while, he looked at the shadow guarding there and said softly, Miss Shuetong, can you tell me why he can enter the Divine Spirit Palace? The patriarch of the Nine Heavens clan also looked at Shuetong. This was also what he was most curious about. After a moment of silence, Shuetong said, if you devour his bloodline, your strength will increase by at least 10 times. You can even break through the seamless Tao and reach the Divine Spirit realm. Naga Qing looked at Shuetong and said with a smile, this person is not simple. If we touch him, we might bring disaster upon ourselves. Shuetong said, will you give up? After a moment of silence, Naga Qing said, is there anyone behind him? Shuetong shook his head. No. Naga Qing stared at Shui Tong. Are you sure? Shui Tong glanced at Shui Tong. It's up to you whether you want to touch him or not. After a moment of silence, Naga Qing said with a smile, Miss Shui Tong, why don't you touch him? Let me guess. You must have discovered something. Otherwise, that young man wouldn't have survived until now. As he said this, he looked at the Divine Spirit Palace in the distance. That young man can enter the Divine Spirit Palace. This means that his identity is definitely not ordinary. As Miss Shui Tong said, if I devour his bloodline, I might reach the Divine Spirit realm, but I might also be doomed. After saying this, he smiled slightly. It's better not to touch this kind of second generation. This kind of young man usually has an old man behind him, or even a group of old men. We can't afford to offend him. P.S. I've just returned home recently. There are too many things to do, so I can't update properly. I go home once a year. When I get home, people ask me what I do, how much money I make. I'm a little embarrassed. I make 4,000 or 5,000 a month, but I'm embarrassed to say. Sigh, I'll work harder next year and try to buy a 4-wheeled one. Chapter 1897. Shui Tong glanced at Naga Qing and did not speak. The Nine Heavens clan leader smiled. Clan leader Qing is still so cautious. Naga Qing smiled. The lives of tens of thousands of clansmen depend on me. I have to be careful. He looked at the Divine Spirit Palace in the distance. This young man is not simple to be invited by the Divine Spirit Palace. The Nine Heavens clan leader was silent. The reason why he informed Naga Qing was to let Nashin clan test Yi Xian's strength. Unfortunately, Nashin clan did not fall for it. What a pity. The Nine Heavens clan leader sighed. Naga Qing glanced at the Nine Heavens clan leader and sneered. Shui Tong licked his candied fruit and did not speak. No one knew what he was thinking. In the distance, Yi Xian came to the front of the palace. He looked up at the top of the palace. There were 3 words, Divine Spirit Palace. Divine Spirit Palace? Yi Xian frowned. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded from inside the palace. Come in. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian walked into the palace. There was a woman sitting cross-legged in the palace. The woman wore a white dress and had shoulder-length hair. Her facial features were exquisite. Beautiful. This was Yi Xian's first impression. In front of the woman, there was a chessboard. The woman looked at Yi Xian. Fellow Taoist, please sit. Fellow Taoist? Yi Xian's expression was a little strange. This woman called him fellow Taoist? Whatever. A fellow Taoist is a fellow Taoist. Yi Xian sat in front of the woman. The woman looked at Yi Xian. Please. Obviously, she wanted Yi Xian to play chess. Yi Xian thought for a while. Then he picked up a chess piece and put it down. The woman put down a chess piece. Fellow Taoist, you have 9 stages in your life chart. It's really rare. Yi Xian frowned. Life chart? 9 stages? The woman smiled. You don't know? Yi Xian shook his head. The woman smiled faintly. After the Divine Spirit realm is the Fate realm, which is also the realm of life cultivation. Life cultivation is divided into 10 stages. The higher the rank, the harder the fate, and the stronger the strength. Yi Xian said in a low voice, I'm only 15 stages. He hasn't even reached the fate realm yet. The woman smiled and said, there are 2 kinds of fate. The first is cultivated, and the second is innate fate. Some people are born with a hard fate, and you should belong to the latter. Yi Xian asked, what's the use? The woman raised a chess piece and placed it down. How did you manage to survive until now? It's because my life is tough. Yi Xian was silent. The woman suddenly said, please excuse me. As she spoke, she gently moved her jade-like finger. In an instant, the blood in Yi Xian's body began to boil. Bloodline power activated. The woman's expression gradually became solemn when she saw Yi Xian's bloodline power. A moment later, she withdrew her hand and said, "I've never seen such a bloodline before." As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian and said, "No wonder your fate is so tough." Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He knew that the reason why his fate was tough was because of his father and Qing. Was he really a second-generation heir? The woman said again, "You have to be careful." Yi Xian was puzzled. "Why do you say that?" The woman said, "Firstly, your bloodline is extremely special. After some powerful people devour your bloodline, they will obtain great benefits. This benefit is enough to change their fate. Secondly, your birth providence is a connate birth providence. In other words, your birth providence can be taken and transferred to someone else." Yi Xian frowned. "This chapter is not finished. Please continue." He frowned. "Fate can be transferred?" The woman nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "According to Senior, my fate is 9 stages. Isn't that very tough? Since it's so tough, how can it be taken away?" The woman said, "Your fate is tough, but your strength is very weak." "Yi Xian," the woman said again, "moreover, some people's fate may be tougher than yours. There are also strong and weak people with 9 stages. Apart from that, there are many powerhouses with 9 stages, and there are 10 above 9 stages." Yi Xian was silent. His entire body was a treasure. The woman said again, "Of course, your bloodline is so special and your fate is so tough. Ordinary people don't dare to touch you. However, those who dare to touch you are either super powerhouses or super forces." Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young master, I think your fate is more than 9 stages." Yi Xian laughed in his heart. "Why?" Xiao Ta said, "Your fate is linked to Sister Tianming. How can it be a mere 9 stages?" "Yi Xian," Xiao Ta said, "My fate is definitely more than 9 stages. Because I am linked to Young Master, being with Young Master is equivalent to being with Sister Tianming. So, I am invincible." "Yi Xian," Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Xiao Ta, I want to change my name." Yi Xian frowned. "Change your name? What name?" Xiao Ta said, "Destiny's Tower." Yi Xian was dumbfounded. Destiny's Tower? This Xiao Ta was preparing to hug Qing's thigh to the end. Xiao Ta said excitedly, "Yes, I will be called Destiny's Tower from now on." Yi Xian, at this time, the woman in front of Yi Xian suddenly said, "Mister, I have a favor to ask." Yi Xian looked at the woman. "What is it?" The woman opened her palm, and a storage ring appeared in her hand. "This is called the God Ring. It is the token of our divine sect leader. Seeing this ring is like seeing the sect leader." Saying that, she put the God Ring in front of Yi Xian. "Help me bring it to divine sect." Yi Xian was silent. The woman smiled slightly. "Of course, I won't ask for your help for free. There are benefits." Yi Xian asked subconsciously, "What benefits?" The woman smiled. "Do you remember the sword wielder you saw before you came in?" Yi Xian nodded. The woman looked at Yi Xian. "He is my sword slave, and his strength is at the divine spirit realm. If you are willing to help, he will listen to your commands in the future. Not only that, there are also 3 sword slaves in this storage ring, and they are all at the divine spirit realm. In addition, I will also give you an inheritance that will allow you to easily reach the seamless path." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Senior, there is something I don't understand. That is, why don't you bring it to divine sect yourself? Why do you want me to do it?" The woman smiled. "I have already fallen. If I leave this place, I will immediately die." Yi Xian hesitated, then asked, "As far as I know, Senior is from a level 8 civilization?" The woman nodded, "Yes." Yi Xian continued to ask, "Then why did Senior die?" The woman didn't speak. Yi Xian just looked at the woman, not saying anything. Great benefits often meant great danger at the same time. At this time, the woman smiled. Can I not say? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. But senior, I might not be able to help you. After all, my strength is low, and if I help senior, I might be overestimating myself. After a moment of silence, the woman said, he was killed. Killed. This chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page. The corner of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. Damn, you were killed even though you were so strong, and you want me to help you? I can't do this. At this time, the woman said, don't worry, he has also fallen. Yi Xian blinked his eyes. Die together? The woman nodded. Die together. So, you can rest assured. Yi Xian didn't speak. The woman said, you need to become stronger, right? Yi Xian nodded. The woman smiled. It's just a ring. As long as you don't cause trouble, nothing will happen. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian stood up and smiled. Okay. The woman pointed at the ring. Where this ring? This ring has the route to divine sect. Apart from that, you will also receive an inheritance. Not only that, there are billions of soul crystals for you to use. Yi Xian looked at the woman. Senior won't trick me, right? The woman smiled. I will. Yi Xian laughed. Thank you for your honesty, senior. With that, he turned and left. After Yi Xian disappeared in the distance, the woman slowly closed her eyes. At the same time, her body gradually became illusory. After a while, a mosquito-like voice suddenly rang out, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Not long after Yi Xian left the Sacred Spirit Palace, the Sacred Spirit Palace behind him disappeared bit by bit. He knew that the woman was completely gone. Yi Xian looked at the ring on his finger. The 4 sword slaves were in the ring. Apart from that, there were billions of soul crystals in the ring. It could be said that he didn't need to worry about cultivation resources anymore. Most importantly, there was an inheritance in the ring. At this time, Shuetong and the other 2 suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Shuetong looked at Yi Xian. You're out? Yi Xian smiled. Yes. Naga Qing suddenly said, Young Master Yi, I am Naga Qing, the patriarch of Nashan clan. Yi Xian looked at Naga Qing and smiled. Senior, don't tell me you want to devour my bloodline? Naga Qing laughed. Young Master Yi, you really know how to joke. Yi Xian blinked. You really don't want to devour? Naga Qing shook his head. Young Master Yi, don't joke. Yi Xian smiled and looked at Shuetong. I'm leaving. Shuetong continued to lick the candied fruit, not saying a word. Yi Xian said, if you want to devour my bloodline, this is your last chance. Shuetong looked at Yi Xian, not saying a word. Yi Xian said with a smile, last chance. Shuetong was silent. Yi Xian laughed and turned to leave. The moment Yi Xian turned around, the smiles on the faces of the 9 Heavens clan leader and Naga Qing gradually disappeared. At this time, Naga Qing suddenly shook his head. I can't afford to offend you. After saying that, he turned around and left. At this moment, he really gave up. Shuetong also turned around and left. At this time, the 9 Heavens clan leader suddenly laughed. The 2 of you, please wait. Naga Qing and Shuetong stopped and looked at the 9 Heavens clan leader. The 9 Heavens clan leader looked at Yi Xian in the distance and said with a smile, Young Master Yi, please wait. Yi Xian turned to look at the 9 Heavens clan leader and said with a smile, all right. The 9 Heavens clan leader looked at Yi Xian. I know that the person behind Young Master Yi is not simple, but Young Master Yi's bloodline is too special. Moreover, Young Master Yi obtained something from the Divine Spirit Palace, so my friend and I want to make a bet. Come out and meet Young Master Yi. As soon as he finished speaking, terrifying auras suddenly appeared. End of this chapter. Chapter 1898. Along with the appearance of those terrifying auras, 16 super experts appeared. Among them, there were 3 seamless Dao experts, and the rest were all seamless realm experts. Naga Ching looked at the old man in the lead and frowned. Ancient clan. Ancient clan. This was also a super force, and its strength was no weaker than the Na Celestial clan. Xue Tong glanced at the Nine Heavens clan patriarch and continued to lick her candied fruit. The Nine Heavens clan patriarch looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Young Master Yi, the temptation of your bloodline is too great. Old man, you've lived for so many years, and you've lived long enough. If you can't break through and reach the divine spirit realm, there's no point in continuing to live. So, I want to give it a try. Yi Xian nodded. Understood. The Nine Heavens clan patriarch laughed, and then looked at Naga Ching. Patriarch Ching, your Na Celestial clan's bloodline has reached a bottleneck, and breaking through is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. This human before you is an opportunity for your Na Celestial clan. So long as you devour his bloodline, your Na Celestial clan will definitely rise to a higher level and achieve glory. Naga Ching glanced at Yi Xian, and then he smiled. No. Nine Heavens clan patriarch, I, Naga Ching, have no ambition. I just want to lead my clan and live well. Please. The Nine Heavens clan patriarch smiled. I won't force you. As he spoke, he looked at Xue Tong. What about you? Xue Tong didn't speak. The Nine Heavens clan patriarch wanted to say something, but the ancient clan patriarch suddenly smiled. Say no more. The two of them want this human's bloodline and the divine items in the divine spirit palace, but they are afraid of wolves in front and tigers behind. Why should we cooperate with them? As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, you have no enmity with the ancient clan, but the power of your bloodline is too tempting, so I'm sorry for offending you. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly disappeared on the spot. At the same time, the experts beside him also rushed out. Yi Xian stood on the spot, and when the ancient clan patriarch arrived in front of Yi Xian, a sword ray suddenly appeared. Boom! Before anyone could react, the Gu clan patriarch was sent flying hundreds of thousands of feet away, and as soon as he stopped, his body instantly shattered. As for the ancient race experts that had rushed towards Yi Xian, other than two seamless experts, the rest were all killed. Everyone was dumbfounded. Naga Ching took a deep look at the sword slave in front of Yi Xian, and his eyes flashed with fear and shock. He never thought that the guard of the Divine Spirit Temple would actually follow Yi Xian. How did this guy do it? Blood-Eye glanced at Yi Xian but didn't say anything. On the other side, the patriarch of the Nine Heavens clan had an extremely ugly expression on his face. Why are the guards of the Divine Spirit Palace following Yi Xian? In the distance, the ancient race leader looked at Yi Xian in disbelief. Why is the Sacred Spirit Palace guard following you? Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, personal charm. The ancient race leader raged, bullshit. At this moment, the sword slave suddenly disappeared on the spot. Hiss. Before the Gu clan's patriarch could react, a sword had pierced through his forehead. Although the gap between the seamless Tao and the half-step divine spirit realm wasn't as huge as the divine spirit realm, it was still like heaven and earth. When they saw this, the remaining two seamless Tao experts turned around and ran, but they were just about to run when two rays of sword light slashed their bodies. Boom! Two powerhouses of the seamless Tao were directly killed. They didn't even have the strength to fight back. Looking at this scene, Yi Xian could not help but look at Xue Tong, who was at the side. Back then, Xue Tong had taken a blow from the sword slave head-on. However, Xue Tong did not die, and his physical body did not even shatter. It seemed that although Blood-Eye was, this chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page. Although he was also a seamless Tao expert, his strength was much stronger. No. This guy was hiding his strength. Yi Xian couldn't help but look at Blood-Eye, and Blood-Eye grinned. At this moment, the Nine Heavens clan's patriarch suddenly said, young friend, I am willing to follow you and serve you. Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, are you worthy? As soon as he finished speaking, the sword slave disappeared on the spot. Hiss. A sword pierced through the Nine Heavens clan's patriarch's forehead. Just as the sword slave was about to destroy the Nine Heavens clan's patriarch, Blood Eye suddenly said, "You can devour his bloodline." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then appeared in front of the Nine Heavens clan's patriarch and slapped his shoulder. Bang! The Nine Heavens clan's patriarch's body shattered, and blood gushed out. Yi Xian opened his right hand, and the blood flowed into his palm. Soon, he absorbed all the blood. A moment later, Yi Xian frowned and looked at Blood Eye. There's no reaction. Blood Eye glanced at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Yi Xian was puzzled and wanted to ask more questions. At this moment, Naga Qing suddenly smiled and said, "Young Master Yi, the reason you didn't react is because his bloodline is too weak." "No, it's because your bloodline is too strong. His bloodline has no effect on yours." "Too strong." Yi Xian smiled and said, "You too, I have to take my leave." Blood Eye suddenly said, "What did you get?" Naga Qing looked at Yi Xian. He was also curious about what Yi Xian had encountered in the Divine Spirit Palace. Yi Xian blinked. "I'm not telling you." After saying that, he turned and left. Blood Eye suddenly said, "I'll go with you." Yi Xian turned and looked at Blood Eye. "Go with me?" Blood Eye nodded. Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then said, "All right." He decided to take Blood Eye with him because he needed his help now. Although he had the inheritance of Divine Sect, his realm was too low. If there was someone to guide him, he could improve even faster. At this moment, Naga Qing suddenly said, "Young Master Yi, if you have time in the future, please come to the Nashin clan as a guest." Yi Xian smiled. "All right." Naga Qing cupped his fists. "See you later." Yi Xian nodded, then turned and left with Blood Eye. After Yi Xian and Blood Eye left, Naga Qing heaved a sigh of relief. In fact, he had thought of killing Yi Xian just now. However, after seeing how calm Yi Xian was, that thought disappeared without a trace. What did it mean to be so calm in front of so many powerhouses? It meant that he had nothing to fear. And his guess was correct. After a moment, the corner of Naga Qing's mouth raised slightly. Ancient clan. Nine Heavens clan. Now this divine universe belongs to the Nashin clan. After saying that, he turned and left. To some extent, the Nashin clan was the biggest winner. On the other side, in the starry sky, Yi Xian was flying on his sword with Blood Eye by his side. About half an hour later, Yi Xian looked around. This place was a dead star field, very quiet, suitable for cultivation. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground and looked at the storage ring on his finger. The next moment, a white light entered his brow. Boom! In an instant, countless information poured into his mind. Inheritance. Divine Sect inheritance. On the side, Blood Eye glanced at Yi Xian, then turned to look at the end of the starry sky. No one knew what he was thinking. After a long time, Yi Xian's body suddenly surged out. This chapter is not finished, please continue. A powerful aura appeared, causing the surrounding starry sky to tremble. Blood Eye looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian suddenly took out countless soul crystals and began to absorb them like crazy. About 10 days later, Yi Xian's aura suddenly soared. Boom! As the starry sky around him fluctuated, Yi Xian reached the 16th phase. Yi Xian was about to rush to the next phase when Blood Eye suddenly said, "If you continue like this, your realm will be unstable and there will be many hidden dangers." Yi Xian looked at Blood Eye. "Then what should I do?" Blood Eye said, "Whether your realm is stable or not depends on your use of the Tao of Spacetime. You have reached the 16th phase, but your mastery of the Tao of Spacetime is still on the low side. You should familiarize yourself with each layer of spacetime and master them." Yi Xian said solemnly, "Please advise me, Miss Blood Eye." Blood Eye nodded. She opened her palm and lightly swept it. In an instant, she and Yi Xian directly entered the 7th layer of spacetime. Blood Eye said, "You can perfectly fuse with the 6th layer of spacetime." There is no need to familiarize yourself with the 6th layer of spacetime and below. We will start from the 7th layer of spacetime. Now feel the spacetime pressure around you. Yi Xian looked around with an incomparably solemn expression. He didn't dare to move at all. If not for Blood Eye, he might have been crushed as soon as he entered the 7th layer of spacetime. The spacetime pressure of the 7th layer of spacetime was at least 100 times stronger than the 6th layer. Blood Eye looked at Yi Xian. It's very simple. Fuse with the 7th layer of spacetime, then overlap the 1st to 7th layers of spacetime and use it in your sword skills. This way, the power of your sword skills will increase countless times. Yi Xian frowned slightly. 1st to 7th layers of spacetime? Blood Eye nodded. Yi Xian said solemnly, I can only overlap the 1st to 5th layers of spacetime. Blood Eye said, if you can't overlap multiple spacetime, even if you reach the 20th layer, you are still an ant. Yi Xian looked at Blood Eye. The Gu clan patriarch is also a seamless path cultivator, and so are you. However, the gap between you and him is very big. Is this the reason? Blood Eye nodded. Yi Xian fell silent. The reason he could fuse with the 6th layer of spacetime was because of the green profound sword. But now, he didn't have the green profound sword. Thinking of this, Yi Xian's expression changed greatly. He suddenly realized that he was actually relying on the green profound sword to such an extent. Without the green profound sword, what should he do? Thinking of this, Yi Xian suddenly broke out in cold sweat. He finally knew why his father had sealed the green profound sword. If he did not seal the Qingxian sword, he would never be able to leave the Qingxian sword. And that was the strength of the Qingxian sword, not his own strength. Thinking of this, Yi Xian felt a lingering fear. Fortunately, his father had sealed the green profound sword. Otherwise, he was afraid that he would be enslaved by the sword in the future. Having a strong sword in a weak person was not a good thing. Beside him, Blood Eye suddenly said, you have to try to fuse with the 7th layer of spacetime and then grasp it. As for the realm, it's actually not particularly important. The so-called realm is just a kind of restraint. Yi Xian nodded. Understood. Saying that, he slowly closed his eyes and began to feel the 7th layer of spacetime. Without the Qingxian sword, would he be unable to cultivate normally? He didn't believe it. When this thought arose, a powerful sword intent suddenly appeared on Yi Xian's body. Ever since he obtained the green profound sword, his swordsmanship had not improved for a long time. But Yi Xian didn't notice that in his sea of consciousness, the green profound sword was also trembling slightly. Yi Xian didn't know that the green profound sword's strength did not rely on absorbing souls, but on absorbing his sword intent. The sword was strong because of the person. End of this chapter. Chapter 1899. The sword grew stronger because of its owner. In the past, Yi Xian had always been relying on the green profound sword, and his strength had dropped by at least 80% without it. That was why the green-clothed man had sealed the green profound sword. When he understood this, the sword intent around Yi Xian grew stronger and stronger, and it caused the deathly silent starry sky in the surroundings to seethe. Xuetong's brows knit together slightly when he witnessed this scene. This fellow seems to have attained sudden enlightenment. Sudden enlightenment. It was rare for one to attain sudden enlightenment in one's life, but once one did, then it might change one's life. Right at this moment, Yi Xian's sword intent entered the 7th level of space, and the spatial pressure there wasn't able to crush his sword intent. Conversely, his sword intent had actually fused into one with the 7th level of space under his control. Xuetong frowned when he witnessed this scene. What's going on? The 7th level of space doesn't reject sword intent? When she thought up to here, she opened her palm and suddenly clenched it. In an instant, a strand of fist intent entered the 7th level of space. However, it vanished without a trace as soon as it entered the 7th level of space. Xuetong couldn't help but gaze at Yi Xian when he witnessed this scene, and his eyes were filled with curiosity. However, he didn't disturb Yi Xian at this moment. because it was an extremely critical moment for Yi Xian. Just like that, around 3 days later, Yi Xian's sword intent had fused completely with the 7th level of space. Now, he'd started to try to utilize his sword intent to fuse with it, but he noticed that it was very difficult. Fortunately, he still had the sword domain. A wisp of a smile arose on his face when he utilized the sword domain. Because he noticed that he could utilize the sword domain to fuse with the 7th level of space. In the following period of time, Yi Xian started to slowly control the 7th level of space under Xue Tong's guidance. In the blink of an eye, a few months passed. On this day, Yi Xian stood in the starry sky while holding a sword in his hand. It wasn't the green profound sword, it was an extremely ordinary green profound sword. After a long moment of silence, Yi Xian suddenly slashed down. Hiss! The space in front of Yi Xian was suddenly torn apart, along with the 7th layer of spacetime. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly took a step forward. No, as soon as he took a step forward, the sword domain appeared. In the next moment, the 7th layer of space was instantly torn into pieces by countless rays of light. Core sword domain. At this moment, Yi Xian opened his palm, and the sword in his hands suddenly vanished. The space 3 kilometers away was suddenly torn apart by a strand of sword light. Space folding. The space folding of the 7th layer. Seeing this scene, the corners of Yi Xian's mouth lifted slightly. Now, he had finally folded the 7th layer of spacetime. Meanwhile, Xue Tong suddenly said, "Spatial folding?" Yi Xian looked at Xue Tong and nodded. Yes. Xue Tong nodded but didn't say anything. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Do you have any suggestions?" Xue Tong said, "You've only folded spacetime. Do you know that spacetime can be folded again after being folded?" Hearing this, Yi Xian was stunned. Time and space are folded again and again? Xue Tong nodded. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Is that possible?" Xue Tong glanced at Yi Xian, "What do you think?" Yi Xian fell silent. Time and space are folded again and again. Xue Tong said, "Do you know why that guard's sword was so fast?" Yi Xian said, "Time and space are folded?" Xue Tong nodded. He's folded the 8th layer at least 4 times, and that's why his sword was able to instantly kill a seamless Dao expert. Because after time and space are folded 4 times, his speed isn't something that the seamless Dao can resist. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "How many times can time and space be folded?" Xue Tong looked at Yi Xian, "Theoretically speaking, countless times. However, the difficulty increases by a few dozen times with every fold. Moreover, the further it goes, the more difficult it becomes." When she spoke up to this point, she licked her candied fruit and said, "The spacetime Dao? This chapter isn't finished. Please continue. It's not as simple as you think." Yi Xian nodded, "I've learned something new." Xue Tong said, "If you can fold time and space a second time, then with your current strength, killing a stage 20 expert is a piece of cake. Even a seamless realm expert isn't impossible." Yi Xian asked, "What if I can fold time and space 3 times?" Xue Tong said indifferently, "I can easily kill a seamless Dao expert." Yi Xian asked again, "What if I can fold time and space 4 times?" Xue Tong looked at Yi Xian, "I can easily kill a seamless Dao expert. Just like that guard in the Divine Spirit Palace." Yi Xian nodded, "I understand." Xue Tong continued, "Folding time and space can't completely measure a person's strength. Besides folding time and space, there's also spacetime distortion, spacetime pressure, spacetime overlap, spacetime detonation, spacetime black hole, spacetime jump, etc. In short, the spacetime Dao is boundlessly profound and mysterious." Yi Xian looked at Xue Tong, "What are you good at?" Xue Tong said indifferently, "A bit of everything." Yi Xian asked, "Are you good at it?" Xue Tong said, "I'm good at it." Yi Xian was speechless. Xue Tong said, "Take it slow." Yi Xian nodded slightly, "Take it slow." As he said this, he sighed. Ever since Xiao Ta's ability was sealed by his father, his cultivation speed had slowed to a crawl. But there was nothing he could do. For now, besides Qing, and Big Brother, there was probably no one who could undo his father's seal. Shuetong suddenly asked, "Where are you going?" Yi Xian smiled, "I'm going to Divine Sect to deliver something." Shuetong looked at Yi Xian, but didn't say anything. Yi Xian said, "Let's go." He was now at stage 16. If he continued to rush, it wouldn't be hard to reach stage 20. Not only did he have Divine Sect's inheritance, but he also had Shuetong's guidance. But he didn't want to be that fast. He wanted to slow down. Sword Dao. After his epiphany, his sword intent was improved, and he used it to fuse with the seventh space. To put it simply, he wanted to improve his sword Dao. In fact, Crimson Eye was shocked at the moment. Under normal circumstances, Yi Xian should not have been able to enter the seventh space and time. However, not only could this guy enter the seventh space and time, but he could also communicate with the seventh space and time. Most importantly, this guy's sword skills were terrifying. Those sword skills could be said to have increased Yi Xian's battle strength by several times. What a mysterious guy. After a while, the two continued forward. 3 days later, the two arrived in front of a black hole. Yi Xian was about to enter when Shuetong suddenly said, "You want to go in?" Yi Xian nodded. Shuetong was silent. Yi Xian asked, "Dangerous?" Shuetong looked at Yi Xian, "Can't you feel it?" Yi Xian shook his head. Shuetong looked at Yi Xian, "How did you survive until now?" "By luck?" Yi Xian was speechless. Shuetong looked at the black hole. The legendary level 8 civilization should be within it. With our current strength, entering it is equivalent to entering a pack of wolves. Understand? Yi Xian was slightly helpless. "Then what should we do?" "I promised someone to help deliver something." Shuetong thought for a moment and said, "Let's just keep a low profile." As soon as she finished speaking, she walked into the black hole. Yi Xian hurriedly followed her in. A few minutes later, Yi Xian and Shuetong appeared in an unknown starfield. Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings and said, "Let's go." As he spoke, he led Shuetong towards the right. 2 hours later, Yi Xian arrived before a mountain range. Meanwhile, Shuetong frowned, "There's the smell of blood." Yi Xian smelled blood as well, and he looked towards the distance. Right at this moment, a palm that was over 100 kilometers long suddenly descended from the sky above the mountain range. If this chapter isn't finished, please keep going. In an instant, the entire mountain range shook. Yi Xian's expression instantly changed. Suddenly, an enormous golden barrier of light arose from the mountain range. Bang! The palm instantly shattered upon colliding with the barrier of light, and then it transformed into nothingness. A powerful wave of energy swept towards the surroundings, and in an instant, space was obliterated. Yi Xian's face sank when he witnessed this scene. What happened? Shuetong gazed at Yi Xian. "It doesn't seem simple." Yi Xian fell silent for a moment, and then he said, "Let's come back another day." Shuetong nodded, "Good idea." As soon as he finished speaking, they intended to flee. Right at this moment, an old man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian and Shuetong. Yi Xian's expression changed slightly. Meanwhile, the old man suddenly gazed at the ring on Yi Xian's finger, and his expression instantly changed drastically, a divine ring. Yi Xian blinked, "You're from the Divine Sect?" The old man hurriedly bowed respectfully. "The Divine Sect's Li Muki greets the Sect Master." "Sect Master?" Yi Xian was stunned, and then he hurriedly said, "You've misunderstood. I'm just here to deliver the ring. I'm not your Sect Master." As he spoke, he was about to take off the ring. However, he noticed to his astonishment that he couldn't take it off at all. What's going on? Yi Xian was quite stunned. Li Muki hurriedly bowed respectfully again. "Sect Master, please return to the sect with me." Yi Xian spoke in a low voice, I'm really not your sect master. I was just entrusted by your sect master to deliver the ring back to you. You absolutely must not misunderstand. Li Muqi gazed at Yi Xian. You're wearing the sect master's ring. You're the sect master. Yi Xian was speechless. He still wanted to say something, but at this moment, a terrifying pressure suddenly enveloped him. Yi Xian frowned slightly. He raised his head to look at the sky, only to see the sky suddenly split open. Then, a shadow floated out, and that shadow looked down at him. Meanwhile, Li Muqi's expression changed drastically. Sect master, quickly return to the sect with me. Yi Xian still wanted to say something, but Xue Tong spoke abruptly, listen to him and enter the protective barrier. As soon as she finished speaking, she charged towards the protective barrier. Li Muqi hurriedly brought Yi Xian along and vanished on the spot. As soon as they vanished, the area where Yi Xian stood earlier was instantly wiped out by a mysterious force. When he noticed this scene, Yi Xian's expression instantly became extremely unsightly. Soon, the three of them appeared on top of a mountain peak. Li Muqi glanced at the sky, then looked at Yi Xian. Sect master, the 10 ultimate shrine besieged divine sect this time for our divine sect's divine ring. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, I'm not your sect master. As he spoke, he was about to take off the ring, but he couldn't take it off at all. At that moment, Li Muqi said, the divine ring has recognized you as its master. As he spoke, he slowly knelt down, please protect my divine sect, sect master. Yi Xian was speechless. Damn it. Was that woman from the Divine Spirit Palace crazy? Asking me to be divine sect master, does she want me to save divine sect? But how am I supposed to save them? At that moment, Xiao Ta suddenly said, young master, you're too stupid. That woman doesn't want you to save divine sect, she definitely wants Sister Tianming to save divine sect. You're divine sect master, what does that mean? It means that divine sect has Sister Tianming behind them. As for you, if it wasn't for Sister Tianming, she probably wouldn't even have let you through the door. You need to know what's going on. Yi Xian said indifferently, the next time I see Qing, I'll say that you're bad-mouthing her. Xiao Ta was instantly enraged, don't slander me. Sister Tianming is my faith. Yi Xian said, do you think Qing, believes you or me? After a moment of silence, Xiao Ta said, young master, I apologize for my words just now. I'm sorry. I, Xiao Ta, will be more careful with my words in the future. Please be magnanimous and let me go. Yi Xian was speechless. End of this chapter. Chapter 1900. Yi Xian was about to speak again when a group of divine sect powerhouses showed up at this moment. Yi Xian was shocked when he saw them. Wow, there were actually 9 seamless path powerhouses, and 2 of them were divine spirit realm powerhouses. This lineup was a little fierce. Li Muqi hurriedly signaled to the divine sect experts. Everyone understood and saluted respectfully, greetings, sect master. Sect master. Yi Xian was speechless. Just as he was about to refuse, Xue Tong suddenly transmitted his voice, don't refuse. Yi Xian looked at Xue Tong and asked, why? Xue Tong said indifferently, think about it yourself. Yi Xian pondered for a moment and sighed inwardly. Divine sect was currently besieged by powerful enemies. Since he had the divine sect divine ring, the forces outside would naturally think that he was divine sect master. No matter how he explained, the forces outside wouldn't let him go. Moreover, the enemy's target was divine sect's divine ring, and it was in his hands. Most importantly, he couldn't take it off. Cut off his fingers. He had thought about it, but he found that the divine ring had fused with him. Even if he cut off his fingers, it would be useless unless he used the profound cyan sword to destroy it. Thinking of this, Yi Xian sighed softly. When he asked the divine spirit palace woman if she would trick him, she said yes. Obviously, she was referring to this. He didn't complain because he also benefited. Wanting to benefit but not doing anything, how could there be such a good thing in the world? Moreover, he needed divine sect. Thinking of this, Yi Xian looked at Li Muqi in front of him. Are you really willing to recognize me as sect master? Li Muqi hurriedly said, of course. The rest of the divine sect experts also hurriedly said, we are willing. Yi Xian smiled, I am only at the 16th phase. 16th phase. Hearing this, the expressions of the divine sect experts in front of Yi Xian became a little strange. Indeed, a little weak. At this time, Li Muqi said, our divine sect is willing to recognize you as sect master. Yi Xian looked at Li Muqi. Why? Li Muqi replied in a solemn voice, because you were personally chosen by sect master Shuesheng. The expressions of the experts from the divine sect changed when they heard Li Muqi. Water sect master. In other words, he was the previous sect master of divine sect. Yi Xian said, because I was chosen by her, so you acknowledge me? Li Muqi nodded. Yi Xian was puzzled. Why? Because in my opinion, she has already perished, and all of you can elect a new sect master. Li Muqi said solemnly, only with the divine ring can one become the sect master, because my divine sect's treasure, the divine seal, is within the divine ring. Yi Xian hurriedly said, I can return the divine ring to divine sect. Li Muqi shook his head. The fact that sect master Shuesheng gave the divine ring to you means that she feels that you can lead my divine sect out of this predicament. As he spoke, he and the divine sect experts respectfully bowed, we are willing to pledge our lives to sect master. Yi Xian was slightly speechless. This is like forcing a duck onto a perch. At that moment, an old man at the side suddenly said, back then, sect master Shuesheng and the temple master of 10 ultimate shrine fought. In the end, we don't know where the two of them went, but we know that they have perished. All these years, my divine sect and 10 ultimate shrine have always been taking revenge on each other. In the beginning, neither of us could do anything to the other, but for some reason, Divine King Valley suddenly helped 10 ultimate shrine. Since then, my divine sect could only defend passively. Shuetong suddenly said, so, Divine King Valley is the key, right? The old man shook his head. Now, even without Divine King Valley, my divine sect's overall strength is inferior to 10 ultimate shrine. Shuetong looked. This chapter is not over. Please continue to the next page. He glanced at the screen of light above him. How much longer can this formation last? The old man said, a month. A month. Shuetong nodded slightly and looked at Yi Xian. You only have a month. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, tell me about the strength of my divine sect and 10 ultimate shrine. The old man said, my divine sect still has 2 divine spirit realm experts, 12 seamless realm experts, 53 seamless realm experts, and 390 level 20 experts. As for the 10 ultimate shrine, they still have 5 divine spirit experts, 37 seamless Dao experts, more than 70 seamless realm experts, and more than 500 phase 20 experts. Yi Xian's face sank when he heard that. The difference in strength is so huge. It's a terrible mess. Meanwhile, Shuetong suddenly said, their main objective is the divine ring? The old man nodded. Because there is a divine artifact and a technique within the divine ring. The divine artifact is called the divine ruler, and it has the ability to measure time and space. Besides that, there is also a supreme technique, the divine radiating scripture. Yi Xian frowned slightly. The divine radiating scripture? The old man nodded slightly. Only by cultivating this technique can one attain the fate chart realm. Yi Xian gazed at the divine ring in his hand. With a command in his heart, a thick golden ancient book suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. The divine radiating scripture. All the experts of the divine sect became excited when they saw the divine radiating scripture. Yi Xian glanced at the divine radiating scripture in his hand, and then he opened it. As soon as he did, a ray of golden light shot into the center of his brows. Bang! Yi Xian's body trembled violently as a huge amount of information surged into his mind. A short moment later, Yi Xian opened his eyes, and Xue Tong asked, "How is it?" Yi Xian gazed at Xue Tong. "What do you mean?" Xue Tong said, "How is the technique?" Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "It seems to be just that." The expressions of all the experts of the divine sect instantly became strange. "Just that? Is that something a human would say?" Xue Tong said, "Can I have a look?" Yi Xian passed the divine radiating scripture to Xue Tong. The expressions of all the experts of the divine sect changed drastically when they witnessed this scene, and Li Muqi hurriedly said, "Sect Master, you mustn't. The divine radiating scripture is the supreme technique of our divine sect. Besides the sect master, no one else is allowed to see it." Yi Xian suddenly said, "All of you can see it as well." All the experts of the divine sect were stunned when they heard this. Yi Xian gazed at Li Muqi, "All of you can see it as well." Li Muqi gulped, and then he said, Isn't that a bit inappropriate?" Yi Xian smiled, "There's nothing inappropriate about it. All of you can see it. Of course, I won't force you if you're unwilling." Li Muqi hurriedly said, "I'm willing. I'm willing." The other experts of the divine sect hurriedly said as well, "We're willing. We're willing." Xue Tong suddenly said, "Hurry up and thank the sect master." All the experts of the divine sect hurriedly bowed respectfully, "Thank you, sect master." Yi Xian smiled, and then he passed the divine radiating scripture to Xue Tong. "Give it to them after you've seen it." Xue Tong nodded and took the scripture. Yi Xian suddenly gazed at Li Muqi and asked, "Can the divine sect summon an ancestor?" Li Muqi nodded, "Yes. However, it can only be done once." Yi Xian smiled, "I can finally summon an ancestor." Li Muqi was speechless. A short while later, all the experts of the divine sect had read the scripture, and it caused them to be extremely excited. After all, only the sect master could read such a supreme technique. Yet now, Yi Xian had actually allowed them to read it for free. This chapter isn't over. Please continue to the next page. What's going on? On the other side, Yi Xian took out the divine ruler. At this moment, he was studying it. After studying it for a while, he shook his head. This divine ruler was indeed not bad. It could measure time and space, and it could even manipulate time and space. However, compared to the Qingxian sword, the gap was really huge. Right at this moment, a powerful pressure suddenly pressed down from the sky. Everyone looked up and saw a man appear outside the screen of light. Li Muqi, who was beside Yi Xian, said in a low voice, "He's the current temple master of 10 Ultimate Shrine, Mu Qiu." Mu Qiu looked down at Yi Xian from the sky. "You're the current sect master of divine sect?" Yi Xian nodded. Mu Qiu smiled, "How interesting. They actually let a rank 16 ant be the sect master. Is there really no one else in the divine sect?" The expressions of the experts of the divine sect became slightly unsightly when they heard that. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Ancestor summon." Ancestor summon? The experts of the divine sect were slightly stunned. Yi Xian looked at Li Muqi, "Ancestor summon." Li Muqi hesitated for a moment and said, "Sect master, that's ancestor summon?" Yi Xian nodded, "Do you have a problem with that?" Li Muqi smiled bitterly, "Sect master, that's our final trump card." Yi Xian smiled, "Looks like all of you don't take me to be the sect master at all. Since that's the case, then I'll return the position of sect master to all of you." As soon as he finished speaking, he left with Xue Tong. The expressions of Li Muqi and the others instantly changed drastically when they witnessed this scene, and one of the old men hurriedly said, "Ancestor summon." Quickly. Li Muqi hurriedly nodded, "Ancestor summon." As soon as he finished speaking, bang! A powerful aura suddenly shot into the sky from below the divine sect. Mu Qiu's expression instantly changed when he witnessed this scene. Is there something wrong with this new sect master? He summons ancestor summon at the slightest disagreement? Actually, it wasn't just Mu Qiu, even the experts of the divine sect found it hard to understand. Ancestor summon was the final trump card of the divine sect, and it had been used just like that. In the future, no other power would fear the divine sect. In the sky above the divine sect, an old man appeared before everyone. The divine sect's ancestor. The experts of the divine sect all knelt down. Greetings, ancestor. The divine sect's ancestor swept the surroundings with his gaze. In the next moment, his gaze descended onto Yi Xian. When he saw the spatial ring on Yi Xian's finger, he frowned. You're the current divine sect master? Yi Xian nodded. That's right. The old man frowned slightly. Why are you so weak? Yi Xian smiled. You haven't matured yet. Everyone, at this moment, a trace of surprise flashed through the old man's eyes. You, a moment later, he grinned. Natural fate, interesting. Little fellow, you're very interesting. Yi Xian bowed slightly, then pointed at Mu Qiu. Senior, can you kill him? The old man turned to look at Mu Qiu, and Mu Qiu's expression instantly changed. This old man was a true Fate Realm expert. He didn't even think before turning to run. Mu Qiu raised his hand slightly, then pressed down lightly. Boom! The distant horizon suddenly exploded. Following a miserable scream, countless amounts of blood splattered. Mu Qiu's body was directly destroyed, but his soul had already escaped. The old man didn't chase after him. Instead, he appeared in front of Yi Xian and looked at Yi Xian. What's your name? Yi Xian said, Little fellow, Yi Xian. The old man pulled Yi Xian to the side and whispered, How many big shots are behind you? Yi Xian, end of this chapter. Chapter 1901. A few big shots. Yi Xian's expression was a little strange. Wasn't that a little too straightforward? The divine sect ancestor smiled. Little friend, you were born with a 9-phase fate. If you didn't have a big shot behind you, you wouldn't have lived until now. Yi Xian smiled. Senior's eyes are like torches. The divine sect ancestor looked at Yi Xian. May I know what realm the big shot behind you is at? Yi Xian thought for a moment, then said, I really don't know. The divine sect ancestor was silent. Yi Xian said again, Senior, it was a coincidence that I could become the divine sect master. I hope that Senior can choose a new sect master. The old man quickly said, You are my divine sect master. Yi Xian, the old man said again, Little guy, I can still stay for a few days. Let me guide you for a few days. I hope it will be of help to you. Yi Xian said solemnly, Thank you very much. In the following time, Yi Xian began to cultivate with the old man. Under the old man's guidance, his cultivation and spatial attainments could be said to have improved by leaps and bounds. 10 Ultimate Shrine. On this day, a woman came to 10 Ultimate Shrine. The woman wore a purple dress and had shoulder-length hair. She held a sheathed long sword in her hand. The sheath was completely black and flickered with light. At this moment, 10 Ultimate Shrine Master Mu Qiu appeared in the shrine. At this moment, his body had recovered, but his face was still extremely pale. Mu Qiu glanced at the woman and then cupped his fists. Miss Mao Shi. Mao Shi. This was the most monstrous genius of Divine King Valley's current generation, born with a 3-phase fate. Mao Shi nodded slightly. Master Mu Qiu, I heard that Divine Sect has a new sect master. Mu Qiu nodded. Yes. However, that person is only at phase 16, nothing to worry about. Mao Shi looked at Mu Qiu. Master Mu Qiu, do you think that Divine Sect will let a person at phase 16 be the sect master? Mu Qiu frowned. He had forgotten to think about this. Mao Shi continued, According to what I know, this person has a god ring, which means that he has obtained the approval of the previous sect master of the Divine Sect, Shui Sheng. Shui Sheng is a peak fate matrix expert, so how could someone who has obtained her approval be ordinary? Mu Qiu said solemnly, but that young man is really only at rank 16. Mao Shi shook his head. Most of the time, realms don't mean anything. Mu Qiu asked, then what does Miss Mao Shi think? Mao Shi said, First, get someone to investigate this person and find out his background. The second point is that the Divine Sect has already summoned its ancestors. They have now lost their final trump card. My master's meaning is that the divine sect should disappear. However, we need to investigate the new sect master's background first. Mu Qiu nodded. I've already sent someone to investigate. Mao Shi nodded slightly. Temple Master Mu Qiu, Master has instructed us that after we destroy the divine sect, we only want the divine ring. Everything else will belong to the 10 ultimate shrine. Mu Qiu replied, of course. Mao Shi nodded and turned to leave. In the hall, Mu Qiu was silent for a long time before he sighed softly. In the past, the 10 ultimate shrine was even stronger than the divine King Valley. However, following the fall of the previous temple master, the 10 ultimate shrine no longer had a life matrix powerhouse. Now, the 10 ultimate shrine was the same as the divine sect. They had to obey the divine King Valley. This was because the divine King Valley had a life matrix powerhouse. After a while, Mu Qiu looked outside the hall and frowned slightly. Divine ring. Why only one divine ring? Divine sect. At that moment, Yi Xian was sitting cross-legged on the ground, attempting to reach rank 17. In front of Yi Xian was the divine sect ancestor. The divine sect ancestor sized up Yi Xian, his expression becoming more and more solemn. After interacting with Yi Xian, he realized that not only did Yi Xian have an innate life matrix, but his bloodline was also extremely powerful. He had never seen such a powerful bloodline before. He was extremely curious about Yi Xian's background. Just then, where did this second generation come from? At that moment, the divine sect ancestor suddenly turned around and walked to the entrance of the hall. He looked into the distance and saw a powerful aura surging out from a nearby hall. That was the hall where Shuetong was. The divine sect ancestor said in a deep voice, Divine Spirit. This girl actually reached the divine spirit realm in less than a day. Amazing. At that moment, the hall's door suddenly opened and Shuetong walked out. Shuetong greedily took a deep breath, then slowly walked to the divine sect ancestor. Above the divine spirit is life matrix, right? The old man nodded. Shuetong asked, what is life matrix? The old man said in a deep voice, life matrix is equivalent to one's own fate. How many living beings can control their own fate? Countless living beings can't escape birth, old age, sickness, and death, or natural disasters. After reaching the life matrix realm, one can slowly control their own fate. Of course, whether they can truly control their own fate is unknown. Shuetong looked into the hall. What will happen if he reaches the life matrix realm? The old man smiled. Right now, he has a natural life matrix, and he has reached phase 9. If he reaches the life matrix realm, his cultivation speed will be at least 10 times that of a normal person. Simply put, once he reaches the life matrix realm, he will be invincible among his peers. This is because normal people need to cultivate, but if he doesn't, he will directly reach phase 9. Shuetong frowned. That's not fair. The old man nodded. It is indeed not fair, but there is no such thing as absolute fairness in this world. Look at this girl's bloodline. The old man has seen the world, but this kind of bloodline is something the old man has never seen before. This girl's father is definitely not a normal person. At this point, he sighed and said, look, he was born with a good father. Aren't you angry? Shuetong took out a candied fruit and licked it, then said, I'm not angry. The old man was puzzled. Why? Shuetong said, I told him. His father is my father. The old man's face froze. Shuetong glanced at the old man, and then he said, Old man, don't panic when you don't have a formidable father. Hurry up and find one. The old man was speechless. Shuetong continued, even though I don't have a life matrix at the 9th level, he does. So, if I follow him, it'll be equivalent to me having a life matrix at the 9th level as well. When she spoke up to this point, she licked the candied fruit and said, if I can't beat him, then I'll join him. Look, under normal circumstances, I might not be able to attain the divine spirit realm, but I've attained it in less than a month by following him. Sometimes, it's useless to bury your head in hard work. The old man couldn't help but give her a thumbs up. Little girl, this old man has learned something new. Shuetong gazed at Yi Xian, who was cultivating in the hall. As long as I have a powerful backer, the world is mine. The old man was speechless. At this moment, Yi Xian, who was in the hall, suddenly stood up. As soon as he stood up, a powerful aura swept out from his body. Phase 17. Yi Xian took a deep breath. He'd attained Phase 17 now. At this moment, the divine sex ancestor appeared in front of Yi Xian. He sized up Yi Xian, and then he said, "How do you feel?" Yi Xian opened his right hand, and a sword appeared in his hand. In the next moment, he directly entered the 7th layer of spacetime. Gradually, he completely merged with the 7th layer of spacetime. At the same time, a powerful pressure appeared in the surroundings. Spacetime pressure. A moment later, the corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up slightly. He left the 7th layer of spacetime and looked at the divine sex ancestor. "Senior, I want to fight an expert of the seamless Tao." The old man hesitated for a moment, and then he said, "I'm afraid it'll be a bit difficult." Yi Xian smiled, "I'll give it a try." As he spoke, he looked at Shuetong, and Shuetong said indifferently, "I'm already at the divine spirit realm." Yi Xian was stunned, and then he said, "So fast?" Shuetong nodded, "Yes." Yi Xian's expression was slightly strange. Isn't this little girl a bit too terrifying? She reached the divine spirit realm in less than a day? Meanwhile, the old man smiled, "This little girl's foundation is too solid." She was already at the peak of the seamless Tao, and she was only a step away from the divine spirit realm. But after she saw the godly radiating scripture, she understood how to step into the divine spirit realm. Of course, if she didn't have the godly radiating scripture, it would probably take some time for her to reach the divine spirit realm. Yi Xian nodded lightly, and then he looked at Shuetong, "Congratulations." Shuetong nodded, "Thank you." Yi Xian smiled, and then he called over a seamless path powerhouse from the divine sect. This powerhouse was called Mu Yan, and he was a powerhouse at the peak of the seamless path. In space, Yi Xian stood with his sword in hand, and Mu Yan stood in front of him. Shuetong and the divine sex ancestor watched from the side. Yi Xian smiled, "Let's begin." As soon as he finished speaking, the sword in his hands suddenly vanished. A flying sword. This sword directly folded space and time. In the distance, Mu Yan's expression instantly changed. He hadn't expected that Yi Xian's sword would be so swift, and he immediately clenched his right hand tightly. In an instant, the space and time he resided in had transformed into a spatial wall. Bang! Yi Xian's flying sword had been blocked. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of Mu Yan, and then an expanse of sword light enveloped the space and time Mu Yan resided in. Rumble. The spatial wall exploded into pieces, and Mu Yan was blasted over 30 kilometers away. As soon as he stopped moving, a flying sword had already arrived at the center of his forehead. He lost. The divine sex ancestor's face sank when he witnessed this scene. I underestimated his sword technique. In the distance, Yi Xian sheathed his sword and smiled. If he held the green profound sword right now, then he would even be able to kill a divine spirit realm expert. The boost from the green profound sword was too terrifying. As if he'd thought of something, Yi Xian gazed at Shuetong. "Miss Shuetong, can I fully activate the energy of my bloodline?" Shuetong thought for a moment and said, "Yes. But it's slightly dangerous. Because your bloodline is extremely abnormal, and you might not be able to control it." Yi Xian fell silent. Just as Shuetong had said, he knew his own bloodline very well. Once it was activated, then his mind would be corroded by killing intent. He was quite worried. Actually, he slightly understood his father's actions. If his father didn't suppress his bloodline, then once he activated it, then it would be equivalent to playing with fire and getting burned. His bloodline was too unstable. Meanwhile, Shuetong spoke abruptly, "It's fine. You can lend your blood to me in the future, and I'll activate it. I'll be very happy to serve you. Yi Xian was speechless. Chapter 1902. Yi Xian was speechless. Xue Tong could really borrow the power of his bloodline. In the end, he gave up on the power of his bloodline. That was because he didn't dare to activate the power of his bloodline, especially now that there were no restrictions on it. If he activated it himself, he definitely wouldn't be able to resist the erosion of the power of his bloodline. However, he was also very curious about what it would be like if the power of his bloodline was completely activated. At that moment, the divine sect master said, I still have 2 days. What do you want me to do for you? 2 days. Yi Xian was silent. He had to make good use of the divine sect ancestor's soul, or it would be a waste. Xue Tong suddenly said, you can go to the 10 ultimate shrine and self-destruct. Yi Xian was speechless. The old man glanced at Xue Tong and shook his head with a smile. It's useless. This strand of my soul is about to completely dissipate. Even if I self-destruct, it won't produce much power and won't hurt the 10 ultimate shrines foundation. Moreover, the Divine King Valley is a greater threat. Yi Xian shook his head and sighed. What a mess. The old man looked at Yi Xian and bowed slightly. Young man, please protect my divine sect. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Senior, there's no need for that. I've received benefits from divine sect, so I should help divine sect. I'll do my best. The old man smiled faintly. I'm relieved to hear this little friend's words. He hesitated for a moment before asking, Young man, is the person behind you from the mountain? Yi Xian frowned slightly. From the mountain? The old man was confused. Isn't he? Yi Xian asked, What's from the mountain? The old man said after a moment of silence, Dao Mountain. Yi Xian was confused. Dao Mountain? Where is it? The old man said in a deep voice, a very sacred place. Only those who have reached the 9th stage of life matrix realm can set foot on this mountain. Once they set foot on this mountain, they are known as the people from the mountain. When he spoke up to this point, he paused for a moment and said, I thought that the person behind you was someone from the mountain, but now it seems like that's not the case. Yi Xian was about to speak when Li Muqi suddenly appeared here, and he spoke solemnly, Ancestor, Sect Master, I just received news that something big has happened in God King Valley and the 10 Ultimate Divine Hall. A huge commotion. The old man looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said, Are they going to launch a large-scale attack? Li Muqi nodded. It should be. Yi Xian said, With our current strength, we definitely can't stop them, right? Li Muqi nodded. We can't. Not to mention all of them together, just the God King Valley alone is enough to destroy us. Yi Xian thought for a moment, then turned to look at Xue Tong. Do you have any good ideas? Xue Tong glanced at Yi Xian. Tell me your thoughts first. Yi Xian smiled and said, My idea is to scare them. Xue Tong licked his candied fruit. All right. Li Muqi was quite puzzled. Scare them? They aren't easily frightened. Yi Xian said, Let's give it a try. As he spoke, he gazed at Xue Tong, Cooperate with me. Xue Tong nodded. All right. Yi Xian said, Then let's head to God King Valley right now. Li Muqi was stunned. Go to the God King Valley? Yi Xian nodded. Of our own accord. Li Muqi hesitated for a moment and said, Sect Master, you. Yi Xian smiled, They'll still return if I don't go. Since that's the case, then why don't I go on my own accord? As he spoke, he gazed at the divine sect's ancestor, Senior, you guard this place. The divine sect's ancestor spoke in a low voice, Little fellow, are you confident? Yi Xian smiled, I'm not. However, I can give it a try. The divine sect's ancestor hesitated for a moment before he said, Be careful. Yi Xian nodded. I will. Green City, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestor, Yi Xian lacks talent and virtue. From this moment onward, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be removed, and Yi Lang shall succeed him. It was an old man in black robes who spoke. A young man stood not too far away from the old man, and he had a faint smile on the corners of his mouth. It was Yi Lang. The Yi clan's elders stood at his sides. Why? Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone looked towards the source of the voice and saw a young girl standing at the entrance. She was around 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the corners of her dress. Her face was sickly pale, and she seemed slightly weak. Moreover, there was a trace of timidity in her eyes. The young girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan intended to remove Yi Xian from his position, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The young girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is a prince. Why did you remove his title for no reason? The great elder looked coldly at Yi Ling. This is a clan matter, what are you interrupting for? Leave. Yi Ling was obviously afraid, and did not dare to look directly at the great elder. However, she did not leave, and mustered her courage to enter the ancestral hall. She once again bowed to the elders on both sides. Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He's fighting for the clan, and we don't even know if he's dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to remove his title. This is really unfair. Impudent. The great elder suddenly raged. Whether or not he is removed, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this moment, the newly appointed Prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The great elder said coldly, then flog 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he's fighting for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the newly appointed Prince Yi Lang, and he knew that this was his chance to show off. The guard sneered, Young Master Yi Lang inherits the title of prince, and it's everyone's wish. What are you shouting for? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard, and said with a smile, What's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. Subordinate Jianghu greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded. You're very good. After I become the crown prince, I'll need 10 guards. From now on, you'll be my guard. Hearing this, Jianghu was overjoyed, and hurriedly bowed deeply. I'll go through fire and water for the crown prince, and I'll do anything for you. Yi Lang nodded slightly. Drag him out. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't show any mercy, understand? Jianghu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. Immediately, he grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Jianghu seemed to have seen something, and he suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the South Mountain. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his expression was frighteningly dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Jianghu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Jianghu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak, when Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Jianghu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged towards Jianghu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Jianghu's chest. Pooh! Jianghu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him, and snarled, your man? As he spoke, he stepped on Jianghu's face. Jianghu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Jianghu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's appearance, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed out, brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Jianghu, and kicked Jianghu's head. Pung! Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned, Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is a prince, why did you discard him for no reason? The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly, this is a matter of the clan, why are you interrupting? Leave. Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged, discard him or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed, you should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Great Elder replied coldly, then flog her 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, this is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now, he is risking his life for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, young master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry. She only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled, what's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed, subordinate Jianghu greets the prince. Yi Lang nodded, you're not bad. After I become the prince, I will need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on. Hearing this, Jianghu was overjoyed. He hurriedly bowed deeply, this subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince. Yi Lang nodded, drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't hold back. Do you understand? Jianghu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Jianghu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a sinister smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, his face dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Jianghu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Jianghu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Jianghu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged at Jianghu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man." "How dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Jianghu's chest. Pooh! Jianghu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and said, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stepped on Jianghu's face. Jianghu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian did not care about Jianghu. As he walked up to Yi Ling, seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Jianghu and kicked Jianghu's head. Pung! Chapter 1903. Mu Qiu was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. Was that something a human would say? Xue Tong lowered his head slightly as the corners of his mouth curled up. He had so many backers. Nice. At this moment, Yi Xian sighed in a low voice. "I also want to live a normal life, but I can't." He glanced at Mu Qiu. "I'm in pain. Do you understand?" Mu Qiu stared at Yi Xian. His gaze was like a sword, as if he wanted to cut Yi Xian into 1,000 pieces. Yi Xian spread his hands. "Come, kill me. I won't fight back." Mu Qiu clenched his fists as his entire body trembled. Yi Xian said angrily, "What are you looking at? Come and kill me. Come here." Mu Qiu's expression became ferocious. Yi Xian said angrily, "I beg you to kill me." Xue Tong was speechless. Mu Qiu's expression suddenly calmed down. He glanced at the Divine King Valley below before looking at Yi Xian. "I won't kill you. I'll piss you off." After saying that, he left with the 10 ultimate shrine powerhouses. Yi Xian looked at Xue Tong and sighed. "It's really painful to be a second-generation heir." "It's really," Xue Tong suddenly punched Yi Xian's face. Bang! Yi Xian flew thousands of feet away. Xue Tong licked her sugar-coated paws and glanced at Yi Xian in the distance. "You'll be struck by lightning sooner or later." Yi Xian was speechless. On the other side, Mu Qiu's expression was extremely ugly. A 10 ultimate shrine elder beside Mu Qiu said in a deep voice, "Temple Master, Yi Xian is too arrogant." Mu Qiu said coldly, "He has the right to be arrogant. The Divine King Valley must be afraid of him if they don't touch him. If the 10 ultimate shrine touches him, I'm afraid we won't be able to die straight away." The elder asked in a deep voice, "What should we do now?" After a moment of silence, Mu Qiu said, "Let's wait and see. If God King Valley doesn't make a move, then we won't." With that, he turned around and left. Yi Xian and Xue Tong returned to divine sect. Yi Xian continued to cultivate, and now, he is trying to enter the 8th spacetime. Seamless spacetime. As soon as he entered the 8th spacetime continuum, he felt an extremely terrifying spacetime pressure. Not only that, there was a person who looked exactly like him standing in front of him. At this moment, divine sect's ancestor appeared beside Yi Xian. He looked at Yi Xian. Do you know what seamless is? Yi Xian shook his head. God's sect ancestor said solemnly, the so-called infinity is the infinity of time and space. In this space, time and space are limitless. Not only is it limitless, but it is also a mirror image. The person you see in front of you is actually you. As he spoke, he opened his palm and swept it lightly. In an instant, countless figures of him appeared here. Yi Xian was a little surprised. This is? God's sect ancestor said, each spacetime continuum is a different world. The core of the 8th spacetime continuum is the mirror image duplication. You can use spacetime to duplicate a mirror image. Of course, it is very difficult to do this. Even some divine spirit realm experts can't do it. Yi Xian was a little confused. Why is it difficult? God's sect ancestor said, because first, you have to merge with the 8th spacetime continuum and then use the special characteristics of the 8th spacetime to duplicate a mirror image. Generally, those who can do this are at least in the life matrix realm. Divine spirit realm experts can at most use spacetime pressure and spacetime folding functions. At this point, he paused and said, with your current strength, it is still very difficult to merge with the 8th spacetime continuum. Yi Xian sighed softly. At this moment, he felt that it was really difficult. If the enemies were of the same level, he really wouldn't be afraid, but the problem was that the enemies were several levels higher than him. One must know that those people on the mountain had their eyes on him, and those people on the mountain were at least in the 9th level of the life matrix realm. The 9th level of the life matrix realm. How to play? He felt a little helpless now. At this moment, Li Muqi appeared and said in a low voice, Divine King Valley and 10 Ultimate Shrine are not moving. Yi Xian said softly, they are waiting for the people on the mountain to come down. God's sect ancestor said in a low voice, little guy, you were born with a 9th level life matrix. This is too attractive to those people on the mountain. 10 Ultimate Shrine and Divine King Valley don't dare to touch you, but the people on the mountain won't care. Yi Xian looked at God's sect ancestor, Senior, do you know much about this Dao mountain? God's sect ancestor shook his head, not much. Because I didn't go up the mountain in the past. Yi Xian was a little confused, why? God's sect ancestor was a little helpless, because you don't have the qualifications. Yi Xian was speechless. A moment later, God's sect ancestor and Li Muqi left. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground, deep in thought. He could already guess what would happen next. The people on the mountain would come down to find him, and he couldn't beat them. At the crucial moment of life and death, either his dad, Qing, or his big brother would come out. In any case, this was the plan from before. It was as if he, Yi Xian, had been arranged by fate. Rely on himself? He really wanted to rely on himself, but for now, even if the Azure Profound Sword was unsealed, he definitely couldn't beat a 9th level life matrix. They weren't on the same level at all, unless his bloodline was completely unsealed. However, other than his dad and Qing, no one could completely unseal his bloodline power. Moreover, even if it was unsealed, he couldn't control such a terrifying demonic bloodline with his strength. Yi Xian thought for a long time, Dad, I also want to rely on myself to solve everything, but the enemy is too strong. I really can't do it. I know you don't want me to be someone who relies on my dad. Don't worry, I won't rely on my dad. After saying that, he stood up and left. Xiao Ta suddenly said, Young master, are you really not going to rely on your dad anymore? Yi Xian nodded. I can't rely on my dad anymore. Otherwise, he'll look down on me. Xiao Ta said in a low voice, what will you do if the people on the mountain come looking for you? Yi Xian frowned. Don't I still have my sister? Xiao Ta was speechless. Yi Xian came to the peak of a mountain and sat cross-legged on the ground. He slowly closed his eyes to sense the azure profound sword. Soon, he felt the azure profound sword in his sea of consciousness. At that moment, the azure profound sword was locked by a ray of sword light, and it was his dad's sword light. Yi Xian said in a low voice, Qing, you forged this sword. I know you can hear me. I want you to help me unseal the azure profound sword. Before he could finish, the azure profound sword shook violently. Boom! The ray of sword light that locked the azure profound sword shattered. Then, the azure profound sword appeared in front of him. Yi Xian was stunned and then said, My sister. At that moment, Xiao Ta suddenly said excitedly, Young master, the seal that master left in my body has been unsealed. Yi Xian said in a low voice, Little soul, can you contact Qing? After a moment of silence, Little soul said, Young master, I can't contact her. Yi Xian thought for a moment and then said, If you can't contact her, then forget it. Then, he looked at the azure profound sword in his hand and entered Xiao Ta's body. In Xiao Ta's body, Yi Xian entered the 8th spacetime. As soon as he entered the 8th spacetime, he used the azure profound sword to fuse himself with the 8th spacetime. At the same time, countless mirror images appeared. With the azure profound sword, the 8th spacetime was like his son. He could do whatever he wanted. It felt so good. Xiao Ta suddenly said, Young master, aren't you afraid that you'll rely on external forces? Yi Xian smiled, Xiao Ta, do you think relying on external forces or living is more important? Xiao Ta replied, Living. Yi Xian spoke softly, I have to live first. Obviously, my father only wants to train me, but he hasn't thought about how I should live. He paused for a moment and said, Xiao Ta, what do you think my father was thinking by sending me to such a dangerous place? Xiao Ta hesitated for a moment and said, Master might be thinking that he'll give birth to another one if you die. Yi Xian's face froze. A short while later, Yi Xian used the azure profound sword to arrive at the 9th spacetime. As soon as he entered the 9th spacetime, Yi Xian's expression changed drastically. At this moment, he was in an unknown starry sky. It was deathly silent all around him, and he could see countless stars. However, they were far beyond his reach. Right at this moment, an old man in a gray robe appeared before Yi Xian. Yi Xian's expression changed drastically. There's someone else here? The old man looked at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, You are? The old man suddenly looked at the sword in Yi Xian's hand, and he frowned when he saw it. You. Yi Xian hurriedly passed the azure profound sword to the old man. Take a good look. You must take a good look. Damn it, I'm afraid I'll be killed by you. The old man picked up the azure profound sword. A short while later, his expression became extremely solemn, and he looked at Yi Xian. Who forged this sword? Yi Xian said, My younger sister. The old man frowned slightly. Your younger sister? Yi Xian nodded. The old man fell silent for a long time. You. What are you doing here? Yi Xian said, Sightseeing. The old man shook his head. It's dangerous. You should go back. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, Senior, you can use this sword to find the person who forged it. You can give it a try. Xiao Ta was speechless. Damn it, this young master is too evil. He's starting to dig a hole for me. The gray-robed old man fell silent for a moment before he said, The old man would like to see the person who forged the sword as well. As he spoke, he held the green profound sword in a reverse grip. In the next moment, the green profound sword started to tremble violently, and the surrounding space actually started to become illusory. A moment later, he suddenly clenched his right hand tightly and shouted, Come out. As soon as he finished speaking, the space in front of him suddenly split open. In the next moment, a ray of light suddenly stabbed into the center of his forehead. At the same time, the ninth layer of space in an area of hundreds of thousands of kilometers was directly obliterated. The gray-robed elder's eyes widened in disbelief. I was King insta-killed? Just as the gray-robed old man was about to disappear completely, Yi Xian hastily shouted, Qing, show mercy. This senior is with me, he's one of us. Just as he finished speaking, the sword light between the gray-robed old man's eyebrows suddenly disappeared. The gray-robed old man's expression froze. His intuition told him that he had been tricked. Chapter 1904. At this moment, the gray-robed elder's heart could be said to be extremely shocked. He had almost been wiped out just now. He did not even have the strength to fight back. He was at the 10th stage of the life chart realm. He was a genuine 10th stage life chart realm cultivator. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, Sir, are you all right? The gray-robed old man came back to his senses. He hesitated for a moment before saying, I'm not worthy of being called senior. I'm Yao Jun, the keeper of the 9th spacetime order. Yi Xian cupped his fists. Senior Jun, Qing, did not hold back. This, Yao Jun shook his head. No, it's my fault. I offended that senior. It's my fault. As he spoke, he hesitated for a moment before he said, Young brother, who is that senior? Yi Xian smiled. What do you think? Yao Jun was silent. He had not found the plain-dressed woman just now, but she had already sensed his presence. She had swung her sword from an unknown number of universes away and he had almost been killed instantly. The strength of this strength had completely exceeded his understanding. This was also what he feared the most. He was at the 10th stage of the life realm, a true powerhouse. Although he was not invincible, he was still a rare opponent. However, he had almost been killed in an instant. It was too terrifying. Yi Xian suddenly asked, Senior Jun, you said that you're the keeper of the 9th spacetime order? Yao Jun nodded. Yes. Yi Xian asked, You're in charge of this spacetime? Yao Jun hurriedly shook his head. No, I'm just a keeper of this spacetime order. The real keeper of this spacetime is the Temporal Temple. Yi Xian frowned. The Temporal Temple? Yao Jun nodded. The 9th layer of spacetime is very complicated, because this spacetime is currently limitless, endlessly large, and its density is also endlessly large. Not only can it not be folded, it can't be twisted. It's as if this spacetime is fixed. As for the Temporal Temple, they specialize in researching the 9th layer of spacetime. Yi Xian asked in a low voice, that means there's no 10th spacetime? Yao Jun nodded. We haven't found it yet. Yi Xian was silent for a moment before looking at the azure profound sword in his hand. Little soul, can you feel the 10th spacetime? Little soul trembled slightly. After a moment, Little soul said, I can feel it. Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, Yao Jun's face was filled with disbelief. This is impossible. This is absolutely impossible. Yi Xian smiled. Why not? Yao Jun said in a deep voice. The Temporal Temple has been to study the 9th spacetime for countless years, but we have yet to find the 10th spacetime order. Yi Xian suddenly asked, Senior, is it very difficult to distort the 9th space and time? Yao Jun nodded. It's not just difficult. In our opinion, it's simply impossible because the spacetime density is simply too thick. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly held the Qingxian sword in his hand and gently guided it. In an instant, the space in front of him directly distorted. Senior Jun, it doesn't seem difficult. Yi Xian smiled. Yi Xian smiled. Mr. Jun, it doesn't seem that difficult. Yao Jun was speechless. At this moment, Yao Jun's expression was incomparably solemn, and his heart was in turmoil. This human could distort the 9th spacetime order? It was too terrifying. Yi Xian suddenly asked, Senior Jun, do you know Dao Mountain? Yao Jun nodded. I know about Dao Yi. What's wrong? Yi Xian smiled. Nothing. I just have some conflicts with them. They want to take my fate. Yao Jun was stunned, then said in shock, how dare they? Yi Xian sighed. They are weak. Who else can they bully? Yao Jun glanced at Yi Xian, and then he said, my young friend, if that senior had acted just now, then wouldn't this mountain of the way have been obliterated with a flick of her finger? Yi Xian said. How can I rely on others? I have to rely on myself. Yao Jun Yi Xian asked again. Senior Jun, I'm leaving. Yao Jun hesitated. Take care, little friend. Yi Xian nodded. Then he turned around and disappeared. After Yi Xian left, Yao Jun immediately turned around and left. Not long after, he arrived at the Time and Space Palace. There were close to 100 time and space teleportation arrays in the palace, and a middle-aged man was sitting at the top of the palace. He was the temple master, Si Qian. Yao Jun walked to Si Qian and bowed. Then, he told him what had happened. Si Qian put down an ancient book and looked at Yao Jun. You were almost killed from countless universes? Yao Jun nodded. Yes. Most importantly, that young man could distort the ninth spacetime order. He did it with ease. Si Qian narrowed his eyes. Really? Yao Jun said in a low voice, absolutely. However, he probably did it with the sword in his hand. Si Qian stood up. Where is he now? Yao Jun said, he left. Si Qian was stunned. Then, he flew into a rage. Left? How could you let him leave? Yao Jun smiled bitterly. He said he wanted to leave. I didn't dare to stop him. I was afraid he would ask someone to kill me. Si Qian. Yao Jun hesitated. Temple Master Si Qian, what kind of divine being is that young man? Si Qian shook his head. How would I know? He looked at Yao Jun. Find that young man immediately. If you find him, invite him to the temporal temple. Yao Jun said in a low voice, there's one more thing. Dao Shan has his eyes on him. They want to take away his fate. Si Qian frowned. Is Dao Shan crazy? Yao Jun said, Dao Shan probably doesn't know the strength of the person behind him. Temple Master, if Dao Shan really attacks him, what should we do? Should we wait and see, or? Si Qian fell silent for a long time. If that young man can deal with it himself, we won't care. If he can't, we'll take action. Yao Jun frowned. Offend Dao Shan? Si Qian said softly, it's worth it. Yao Jun nodded. Understood. Then, he turned and left. After Yi Xian left the ninth layer of space, he entered Shao Ta and started cultivating. Shao Ta had been unsealed. 10 years inside was equivalent to 1 day outside. Now, he could use Shao Ta to close the gap in strength between him and his enemies. With the Qingxian sword, Yi Xian directly merged with the 8th layer of time and space. Not only that, but he was also immune to the 8th layer of time and space's power of time and space. Most importantly, after using the Qingxian sword, he could directly fold time and space 4 times. In other words, although he was only at the 17th layer, he could easily kill someone at the divine spirit realm. He could even fight someone at the fate chart realm. But the problem was that everyone on the mountain was at least at the 9th layer. Thinking of this gave him a headache. But now, he couldn't think about anything else. His top priority was to improve his strength. With the green profound sword and Shao Ta, it was very easy to improve his strength. Not long after, Shui Tong also entered Shao Ta to cultivate. After discovering Shao Ta's heaven-defying ability, Shui Tong didn't leave. He stayed in the tower to cultivate every day. A few days later. A few days outside was 10 years inside Shao Ta. Yi Xian had reached the 19th layer. Not only that, he also used the green profound sword to perfectly merge with the 9th layer of space. He could now fold the 9th layer of space. To enter the 9th layer of space, only those at the fate chart realm could do it. To merge with the 9th layer of space was an impossible task, but he did it with the green profound sword. Right now, he didn't even know what level his battle prowess had reached. 10 days later, Yi Xian reached the seamless realm. He was getting more and more adept at using the spacetime Dao. He could now overlap 1 to 8 layers of space. On this day, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in the sky above Divine Sect. The experts of Divine Sect all looked up. In the sky, the middle-aged man swept his gaze over Divine Sect. Where is Yi Xian? The moment he finished speaking, a sword beam appeared in front of the middle-aged man. The person who had come was Yi Xian. The middle-aged man sized up Yi Xian and narrowed his eyes. You really do have a special bloodline, and you're born with a 9th layer fate. Yi Xian glanced at the middle-aged man. Someone from the mountain? The middle-aged man nodded. Someone from the mountain. Yi Xian's expression darkened. This guy had a 9th layer fate. At this moment, the middle-aged man suddenly said, God King Valley's Valley Master Twilight Valley told me that you come from a low-level civilization. This is truly interesting. A low-level civilization actually produced a person with a special bloodline, and one with an innate 9th stage fate providence. It's not just interesting. Yi Xian smiled. Did you come here to strip me of my bloodline and fate? The middle-aged man nodded. Yes. Yi Xian thought for a moment, then said, Sir, I won't hide it from you. There's someone behind me. The middle-aged man smiled. I know there's someone behind you, but so what? Yi Xian smiled. Sir, do you not want to see the person behind me? The middle-aged man's lips curled up. Are you threatening me? Yi Xian shook his head. No, I just feel that you should take a look first before deciding whether or not to kill me. The middle-aged man stared at Yi Xian for a few moments before smiling. Then I'll take a look. Yi Xian hurriedly presented the azure sword to the middle-aged man. Sir, the person behind me is the person who forged this sword. With your strength, you can definitely use this sword to find the person behind me. Please begin. The middle-aged man glanced at the azure sword in Yi Xian's hand, and his eyes quickly narrowed. Your sword is rather extraordinary. Yi Xian smiled and said nothing. The middle-aged man glanced at Yi Xian and then said, Then let me see just who the person behind you is. As he spoke, he suddenly held the green profound sword in his right hand. In an instant, the space and the surroundings started to tremble. After a short moment, the middle-aged man suddenly raised his head, and as soon as he raised his head, a sword pierced directly into the center of his forehead before piercing all the way down. Boom! The middle-aged man's eyes went wide, and his mind went blank. How the fuck did I get instantly killed? Chapter 1905. Dead. Even in death, the middle-aged man did not understand how he had died. On the side, Yi Xian put away the azure profound sword and then returned to the Shao Ta to continue cultivating. Down below, the divine sect experts glanced at each other, dumbfounded. God King Valley. Within the tree hall, Twilight Valley reclined on a rattan chair, his right foot crossed over his left. His eyes were half closed, and his right hand was lightly tapping the chair beside him. At this moment, Mao Shi entered the tree hall, her expression gloomy. Master, that person on the mountain has died. Twilight Valley's tapping finger stopped, and after a few moments, she softly asked, How did he die? Mao Shi hesitated, then said, It said that he touched the sword in Yi Xian's hand, and then he was silently erased. Twilight Valley's brow creased. Touched the sword? Mao Shi nodded. Yes. After a long silence, Twilight Valley softly said, Although this person is not from the mountain, he is still no ordinary person. Mao Shi sternly said, Master, I carefully investigated this person. He came from a level 2 civilization. Twilight Valley suddenly shook his head. This means that this person is not simple. Mao Shi nodded. Truly. This person has many mysteries, especially the sword in his hand. It's said that when he wields the sword, he is immune to the pressure of spacetime and the spacetime abyss. Twilight Valley narrowed his eyes. Is that true? Mao Shi nodded. It should be true. After a long silence, Twilight Valley said, the person on the mountain will not give up. Continue watching. Mao Shi nodded and then withdrew. 10 Extreme Divine Palace. At this time, Mu Qiu had learned that the person on the mountain had died. Upon learning this news, he heaved a sigh of relief. Rejoice. He was very glad that he had not let his head get to work and attacked Yi Xian. Otherwise, he might have been dead. A second generation. That bastard really was a second generation. Within the Shao Ta, on this day, Yi Xian suddenly stopped cultivating. A moment later, he vanished, and when he reappeared, he was in front of Xuetong. When he saw Xuetong, Yi Xian was dumbfounded. Crimson Eye had already reached the life matrix realm. Xuetong slowly withdrew a candied hawthorn when she saw Yi Xian, and then she licked it and said, "You seem very surprised. You've reached the fate realm so quickly?" asked Yi Xian. Crimson Eye blinked. Is it that fast? Yi Xian was stunned, and then he shook his head and smiled. He suddenly recalled that although only 7 or 8 days had passed in the outside world, 70 or 80 years had passed in Shao Ta's body. However, even so, it was still very fast. This Crimson Eye was not simple. Blood Eye suddenly asked, "You reached stage 20? Yi Xian nodded. He had already reached level 20. Ever since Shao Ta was unsealed, his cultivation speed was simply incredible. Suddenly, Xuetong opened her palm, and the God-radiating scripture appeared in her hand. She looked at Yi Xian. This is not bad, do you want it? Yi Xian looked at the God-radiating scripture. I think this was originally mine, right? Xuetong blinked, and then she passed it to Yi Xian. What I mean is, if you don't want it, then you can give it to me. Yi Xian put away the God-radiating scripture. This little girl is very naughty. At this time, Xuetong asked again, "Can you lend me your sword to play with?" Yi Xian opened his palm, and the azure sword appeared in his hand. He looked at Xuetong and smiled. You want to play with this sword? Xuetong nodded. Just to have a look. Yi Xian smiled, and then he passed the azure sword to Xuetong. Xuetong held the azure sword, and after a while, she frowned. No reaction. Yi Xian smiled. This sword can only be used by me. Xuetong glanced at Yi Xian, and then she returned the sword to Yi Xian. Your sister made it for you? Yi Xian nodded. Xuetong licked the candied fruit, and then she said, "Ask her to make one for me as well." Yi Xian was stunned, and then he asked, "Why?" Xuetong said seriously, "Didn't I tell you before? If your father is my father, then isn't your sister my sister?" Yi Xian was speechless. Xuetong asked again, "Is there a problem?" Yi Xian chuckled. What do you think? Xuetong thought for a moment, and then she said, "I'm strong, and I can fight for you. So, helping me is equivalent to helping yourself." Yi Xian patted Xuetong on the shoulder. I made my fortune by conning people. He turned and left as soon as he finished speaking. Xuetong continued to lick the candied fruit in silence. In the following time, Yi Xian started to try to break through to the seamless state. In fact, after the azure sword was unsealed, cultivation wasn't that important to him anymore. For example, even a 10th stage life matrix expert couldn't shake the 9th stage of time and space, but he could. However, he still had to go through this process. As for the problem of relying on external objects, he didn't want to think about it anymore. All he wanted now was to survive. If he really followed his father's method, he would be killed by the cruel reality sooner or later. But Yi Xian didn't know that the people of the temporal temple were frantically looking for him. One could enter the ninth stage of time and space from any world, so when Yi Xian left the ninth stage of time and space, Yao Jun was a little annoyed. This was because he realized that he had no idea which universe Yi Xian was in. After knowing that Yi Xian could distort the ninth stage of time and space, all the experts of the temporal temple were excited. They had researched for their entire lives just to understand the ninth stage of time and space, but there was almost no progress. The ninth stage of time and space was a barrier for all life matrix experts. As long as they understood the ninth stage of time and space, they would have the opportunity to break through the life matrix realm and reach a whole new level. However, after countless years of research, they still couldn't understand the ninth stage of time and space. They couldn't even distort the ninth stage of time and space, let alone fuse with it. But now, someone could distort the ninth stage of time and space. All the experts of the temporal temple were excited. In an unknown world, Yao Jun smiled bitterly. If he couldn't find Yi Xian, those old fellows of the temporal temple would really kill him. He was helpless. When Yi Xian said he wanted to leave, it wasn't that he didn't want to stay. The problem was that he didn't dare to. After all, he was so close to being wiped out. It was too difficult. After a while, Yao Jun turned around and left. He continued to search. 10 days later, a woman appeared in the clouds above the divine sect. She wore a white robe and tied her hair into a ponytail. She had sharp eyebrows and phoenix eyes, looking very heroic. There was a young man standing beside the woman. The man wore a brocade robe and stood straight. His eyes were as sharp as blades. The woman suddenly smiled and said, "I didn't think that there would be someone born with a ninth stage fate in such a low-level civilization." Saying this, she looked at the man beside her and said, "Brother Xiao Yun, what do you think?" The man called Xiao Yun smiled and said, "It's indeed a little abnormal. I think the person behind him must be extraordinary." The corner of the woman's mouth raised slightly. "Second generation?" Xiao Yun smiled and said, "Special bloodline, born with a ninth stage fate. If this person isn't a second generation, then what is? Looks like we have to be careful." The woman smiled lightly. "Brother Xiao Yun, in terms of strength and background, who can compare to you? You were born with the world's strongest bloodline, the Flame God bloodline. Moreover, you were born with a sixth-stage fate. Most importantly, you have the world's second strongest spacetime physique." Saying this, she shook her head and smiled. "The scariest thing is that you also awakened the nether demon soul." Xiao Yun shook his head and smiled. "Miss Lin Yao, since you're praising me like that, let me guess. You definitely want me to go meet this sect Master Yi first. It's best if I fight with this sect Master Yi until both of us are heavily injured, and then you can come and reap the benefits, right?" Lin Yao was about to speak when Xiao Yun suddenly smiled and said, "Miss Lin Yao, I'm just joking." How could Miss Lin Yao be so bad? "I'm just joking." Lin Yao smiled and said, "Brother Xiao Yun said you want to fight with sect leader Yi until both of you are injured. I don't think that sect leader Yi can threaten Brother Xiao Yun. According to what I know, sect leader Yi was only at the 17th stage, not even the divine spirit realm. But Brother Xiao Yun is now a 6th-stage fate. As for the person behind sect leader Yi, in terms of background, who is stronger than you, Brother Xiao Yun?" Xiao Yun laughed and said, "Miss Lin Yao, you're making me a little arrogant." Lin Yao glanced at Xiao Yun and didn't speak. Xiao Yun suddenly smiled and said, "He was born with a 9th-stage fate chart, and he even possesses a special bloodline. Miss Lin Yao, if you obtain his fate chart and devour his bloodline, TSK. When he spoke up to here, he didn't continue. Lin Yao smiled lightly and said, "Young Master Xiao Yun, aren't you tempted? Although your Yen clan's bloodline is number 1, I heard that sect leader Ye's bloodline is extremely special. If you devour his bloodline, then perhaps your bloodline will be able to suppress the entire Xiao clan. Moreover, sect leader Yi was born with a 9th-stage fate chart. If you can obtain it, TSK. When they spoke up to here, the two of them looked at each other and smiled, each with their own thoughts. At this moment, the space in the distance suddenly trembled, and in the next moment, a man walked out. The man had long hair that draped over his shoulders, and he wore an evil smile on his face. Lin Yao smiled lightly when she saw the man, so it's brother Yang Feng. The man called Yang Feng smiled and said, I thought I was late. I never expected that both of you wouldn't make a move. What? Were you waiting for me? Xiaoyun smiled and said, Brother Yang Feng, the two of us are slightly fearful, so we don't dare to make a move. Yang Feng roared with laughter, What? You want me to go first? Xiaoyun smiled, As you wish. Yang Feng glanced at them, and then he shook his head with disdain, Both of you are really tired of living. It's such a simple matter, yet you keep thinking about it. How boring. If both of you aren't going to make a move, then I will. As he spoke, he turned around and looked down, and then he stomped his right foot against the ground and roared with laughter, Yi Xian, I know you're spying on us from the shadows. Quickly come out here and let me beat you to death. His voice rumbled like thunder and shook the sky. As Yang Feng roared with laughter, Yi Xian walked out slowly, and he smiled as he walked over to Yang Feng, All right. As he spoke, his figure instantly became ethereal. In the next moment, he'd entered the 9th level of space. After that, everyone watched as he swung his sword lightly, and the 9th level of space warped. The expressions of Lin Feng and the others changed drastically when they witnessed this scene. The 9th level of space was warped. Yi Xian glanced at Yang Feng, Xiaoyun, and Lin Yao, and he smiled, The three of you can come at me together. As he spoke, he gazed at Yang Feng and grinned, I'll believe you if you attack me twice. Chapter 1906. Needless to say, Xiaoyun and Lin Yao were extremely shocked. Warping the 9th level of space. Not to mention them, even their fathers couldn't do it. However, this human before them could actually warp the 9th level of space. That was too unusual. Even the arrogant Yang Feng fell silent at this moment. If he hadn't witnessed the warping of the 9th level of space, he wouldn't have believed it even if he was beaten to death. At this moment, he knew that this human wasn't as simple as he'd thought. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly smiled, Someone came just now. He seems to be at the 9th stage of the fate chart realm. I don't know his name, but I know that he's too weak. He can't even withstand a single attack from me. How boring. As he spoke, he glanced at Lin Feng and the others, We're going to waste time. The three of you can come at me together. Xiaoyun and Lin Yao's expressions turned slightly unsightly. Meanwhile, Yang Feng suddenly spoke fiercely, Yi Xian, you're really arrogant, aren't you? Yi Xian suddenly looked at Yang Feng and smiled, Arrogant? Is that what you call arrogant? He shook his head and smiled, Let me show you what arrogance is. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure merged with the 9th level of space. Directly merged. Yang Feng and the others were dumbfounded by this scene. Merged with the 9th level of space. All of them were dazed. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly laughed with disdain, A low-level civilization that hasn't even comprehended the 9th level of space dares to covet my fate and bloodline? How laughable. Yang Feng and the others had slightly unsightly expressions on their faces. Meanwhile, Lin Yao spoke abruptly, Young Master Yi, I didn't come here to become enemies with young Master Yi. I just want to get to know young Master Yi. Yi Xian looked at Lin Yao, You know me? Lin Yao grinned, Yes. Yi Xian smiled, Miss Lin Yao, I, Yi Xian, like to make friends. Let's talk somewhere else. Lin Yao was stunned, and then she smiled, All right. As soon as they spoke, they vanished on the spot. Xiaoyun and Yang Feng's expressions were unsightly to the extreme. After a short moment, Xiaoyun said softly, This Miss Lin Yao is really flexible. Yang Feng's face was gloomy, but he remained silent. He had never suffered such humiliation before. He had wanted to make a move just now. But reason won over impulse. That guy could distort the 9th layer of space-time. Not only that, but it could also fuse with the 9th layer of time and space. Xiao Yun suddenly said, "Looks like we've underestimated this young Master Yi." With that, he turned around and left. After a moment of silence, Yang Feng also left. On the other side, Yi Xian and Lin Yao were walking slowly in the clouds. Lin Yao smiled and said, "To be honest, we underestimated young Master Yi." Yi Xian smiled, "Miss Lin Yao, can you tell me about the powers of Daoist Mountain?" Lin Yao was a bit surprised. "Young Master Yi doesn't know about Dao Mountain?" Yi Xian asked, "Do you think I should know?" Lin Yao blinked. "Young Master Yi, are you from a higher civilization?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "What do you think?" Lin Yao smiled and said nothing. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Miss Lin Yao, I'll take you to a place." With that, he brought Lin Yao into Xiao Ta. After entering Xiao Ta, Lin Yao was stunned. Soon, her expression changed drastically. This, Yi Xian brought Lin Yao away from Xiao Ta. Lin Yao clenched her fists, her eyes were filled with shock. Yi Xian walked to Lin Yao and smiled, "Miss Lin Yao, we'll meet again." With that, he turned around and disappeared into the distance. Lin Yao was silent for a long time, then turned around and left. Yi Xian returned to Xiao Ta and began to cultivate crazily. He had tricked Lin Yao and the others into leaving, but he knew that they would come back soon. His top priority now was to improve his strength as soon as possible. Xue Tong stopped cultivating. She had reached the life matrix realm, so it would be impossible for her to improve in a short time. On this day, Xue Tong came to Yi Xian. Yi Xian, who was cultivating, opened his eyes and looked at Xue Tong. "What's the matter?" Xue Tong took out a stick of candied hawthorn and licked it, then said, "Tell me what might happen next." "There are 2 possibilities. The first is that Dao Mountain couldn't resist the temptation and will kill you at all costs, taking away your bloodline and life matrix. The second is that they are afraid of you and start to investigate you." With that, she looked at Yi Xian. "Can they find out who's behind us?" Yi Xian frowned. "Us?" Xue Tong licked the candied hawthorn. "Your backer is my backer, of course, my backer is also your backer." Yi Xian looked at Xue Tong. "Do you have a backer?" Xue Tong nodded. "My backer is your backer." "Yi Xian," Xue Tong said, "Lin Yao was scared by you just now. The force behind her might become your helper, but I don't think it's very likely." Yi Xian was puzzled. "Why?" Xue Tong said, "Helping you is equivalent to becoming enemies with other forces. Moreover, they might want the sword in your hand, your life matrix, and your bloodline." With that, she looked at Yi Xian. "All living beings are greedy, there are no exceptions." Yi Xian smiled. "Then what do you think I should do now?" Xue Tong thought for a moment, then said, "Do you think Dao Mountain will give you a lot of time?" Yi Xian shook his head. Xue Tong asked again, "Can you reach the life matrix realm in another 10 days? 10 days was equivalent to 100 years. Yi Xian shook his head once more. Moreover, even if he could, he wouldn't dare to rush into it. It would not be a good thing to advance his cultivation realm too quickly. His current goal was the seamless realm. Xue Tong continued, "Since that's impossible, we have to think of a way to deal with Dao Mountain." Yi Xian looked at Xue Tong. "How?" Xue Tong smiled. "One word, pretend." Yi Xian's lips perked up. Great minds think alike. 2 hours later, Yi Xian and Xue Tong headed for God King Valley. The moment they arrived, Twilight Valley appeared before them. Yi Xian smiled. "Valley Master Twilight Valley, I will be going to Dao Mountain." Twilight Valley was taken aback, and then he smiled. "Take care, Sect Master Yi." Yi Xian walked up to Twilight Valley and smiled. "Valley Master Twilight Valley, after I leave, you won't have any thoughts about the divine sect, right?" Twilight Valley hurriedly shook his head. "I wouldn't dare." Yi Xian smiled. "I have received benefits from the divine sect and promised Sect Master Shueisheng to protect the divine sect, so I do not wish for God King Valley to make trouble for the divine sect. Is that all right? Twilight Valley smiled. Young Master Yi, your journey to Dao Mountain is long. You must be careful. The meaning behind his words was that whether or not he would move against the divine sect would depend on whether or not Yi Xian could survive. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly unsheathed his sword and slashed. Unsheathing the sword determined life and death, and this strike was layered with 4,800 slashes. Twilight Valley paled at this strike, and she hurriedly raised the sphere of light in her hand to block. Boom! The sphere of light shattered and countless rays of blue light shot out. The surrounding spacetime was annihilated, and Twilight Valley herself was pushed back tens of thousands of feet. But before she could stop, a sword was pressed against her forehead. The ninth spacetime folding. This strike was so fast that not even Twilight Valley, who had reached the life matrix realm, could react in time. Twilight Valley was dumbfounded. She didn't even have the ability to fight back against this scoundrel. In truth, Yi Xian was also dumbfounded. He had never imagined that after he folded up the ninth layer of spacetime, the flying sword would reach this level of speed. In that moment, the Azure Profound Sword had been so fast that not even he could react. Too terrifying. At this moment, Twilight Valley sternly said, Young Master Yi, my God King Valley will no longer touch the divine sect. Yi Xian looked at Twilight Valley. A moment later, the Azure Profound Sword sank into Twilight Valley's forehead. Boom! Twilight Valley was absorbed. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Naive. Promise? That thing was just like one's character. Oftentimes, it was worthless. The Azure Profound Sword flew out of Yi Xian's hand. A moment later, all the Divine Spirit Realm experts in God King Valley were slain by him. An hour later, Yi Xian turned and left. It wasn't long before he returned to the 10 Ultimate Divine Hall. The moment he arrived, Mu Qiu appeared in front of him. Yi Xian was about to speak when Mu Qiu hurriedly said, Young Master Yi, my 10 Ultimate Divine Hall was wrong. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. Mu Qiu continued, I, Mu Qiu, had eyes but failed to recognize young Master Yi and offended him. I ask that young Master Yi be magnanimous and let my 10 Ultimate Divine Hall off. As he spoke, he hurriedly took out a spatial ring and placed it in front of Yi Xian. This is a small token of my appreciation. Please accept it, young Master Yi. Yi Xian looked at Mu Qiu. You know about God King Valley? Mu Qiu hesitated for a moment before nodding. Yi Xian suddenly slashed out with his sword. Swish! Mu Qiu's head flew into the air, and his soul was instantly absorbed by the Azure Profound Sword. Yi Xian issued a command in his heart, and the Azure Profound Sword flew into the 10 Ultimate Divine Hall. It wasn't long before all the Divine Spirit Realm experts within the 10 Ultimate Divine Hall were killed by him. Never believe the nonsense of your enemies, and never show mercy to your enemies unless you don't have the strength to do so. Who would lie when they had the strength? 2 hours later, Yi Xian headed towards Dao Mountain. On the way, Shuetong suddenly said, You seem to be very strong. Yi Xian nodded. I noticed it as well. Shuetong suddenly asked, Do you know how to get to Dao Mountain? Yi Xian's expression froze when he heard this. He really didn't know. Shuetong licked his candied fruit and said, Are you joking? Yi Xian glared at Shuetong, and then he brought Shuetong into the 9th layer of space. Even though he didn't know how to get to Dao Mountain, the guardian of the 9th layer, Yao Jun, definitely knew. As soon as he entered the 9th layer of space, the space in front of him started trembling, and then Yao Jun walked out. When he saw Yi Xian, Yao Jun was stunned at first, and then he pounced in front of Yi Xian and said excitedly, Young Master Yi, I finally found you. Yi Xian was stunned, and then he said, Elder Jun, why are you looking for me? Yao Jun hurriedly said, Young Master Yi, the Hall Master wants to see you. Yi Xian blinked. Your temporal temple? Yao Jun nodded. Yi Xian immediately shook his head. I'm not going. Yao Jun was slightly puzzled. Why, Yi Xian said seriously, I'm afraid I'll implicate all of you. Yao Jun was even more puzzled. What do you mean, young Master Yi? Yi Xian sighed in a low voice. Dao Mountain wants to kill me. If I go to the temporal temple, won't I implicate all of you? Yao Jun immediately said, my temporal temple isn't afraid of Dao Mountain. Yi Xian said, I'm afraid. Yao Jun blurted out, as long as my temporal temple is here, no one can touch young Master Yi. Yi Xian was about to say something, but at this moment, a voice suddenly sounded from the side. Is that so? My Yang clan would like to see if your temporal temple can protect him. As the voice fell, a powerful aura suddenly appeared on the scene. Yi Xian looked at Yao Jun and said seriously, Elder Jun, you will protect me, right? Yao Jun. P.S. Please vote. It's the new year. Please vote for the new year. Chapter 1907. Dao Mountain's Yang Clan. Yao Jun's expression turned ugly. There were 3 great clans in Dao Mountain, Shao Clan, Yang Clan, and Lin Clan. Although these 3 clans would usually compete with each other secretly, they would be extremely united in the face of external enemies. This was because the ancestors of these 3 clans were once good friends. Before they died, they had left behind their ancestral teachings that if there was an external enemy, the 3 clans must stand together and fight together. Temporal Temple might not be afraid of Dao Mountain, but Dao Mountain wasn't afraid of them either. If they really fought, the odds were 50-50. Yi Xian looked to the side and saw an old man walking over slowly. The old man wore a black robe, and his hands were hidden in his wide sleeves. His eyes were like knives, and his body emitted a domineering aura. Seeing the old man, Yao Jun's expression darkened. Life-body realm. Life chart realm was divided into 10 levels, and after that was life-body and life-soul. What was life-body? It referred to the strengthening of one's fleshly body. Generally, reaching the life-body realm meant that one had already grasped the power of destiny. This was an extremely mysterious power, and once one reached the life-body realm, ordinary godly items wouldn't be able to break through their defenses. The old man glanced at Yi Xian and sneered. Then, he looked at Yao Jun with a cold expression, your temporal temple wants to protect this human? Yao Jun was about to speak, but the old man suddenly shouted angrily, don't talk nonsense. If you want to protect him, my Dao Mountain will declare war on your temporal temple. We will fight to the death. If you can't protect him, then leave immediately to avoid harming the relationship between my Dao Mountain and your temporal temple. Overbearing. Yao Jun's expression turned ugly. Declare war on the Dao Mountain? He definitely didn't have the authority to make such a decision. At this moment, Temporal Temple's temple master Si Qian suddenly appeared. Seeing Si Qian, Yao Jun heaved a sigh of relief. Boss is here. Si Qian looked at the old man, are you threatening my temporal temple? Yang clan's elder sneered, threatening? Temple master Si Qian, my Dao Mountain has no enmity with your temporal temple. Why would I threaten you? As he spoke, he pointed angrily at Yi Xian, this human killed my Dao Mountain's experts. My Dao Mountain is here to seek justice. Yi Xian glanced at the Yang clan old man but did not speak. Si Qian glanced at Yi Xian before turning to the Yang clan elder, Sir, this young Master Yi is a guest of my temporal temple. If there's anything, can we talk about it another day? The Yang clan elder stared at Si Qian, does that mean that your temporal temple is going to protect him? Just as Si Qian was about to speak, the Yang clan's elder spoke again, Hall Master Si Qian, this person belongs to my Dao Mountain. If your temporal temple dares to stop us, then that old man can tell you that from this moment on, we will fight to the death until one side is exterminated. Hearing this, Si Qian's face turned ugly. Fight to the death. He wasn't afraid of the Dao Mountain, but was it worth it to fight the Dao Mountain for a human? One had to know that the Dao Mountain was no ordinary power. If they really fought to the death, even if the temporal temple won, it would be a Pyrrhic victory. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded in Si Qian's mind, Hall Master, this human isn't simple. Our temporal temple can let him fight with the Dao Mountain, and we can sit back and reap the benefits. That's a good idea. Hearing this, Si Qian glanced at the distant Yi Xian. Yi Xian's expression was calm, without a trace of panic. That voice sounded in Si Qian's mind again, this person has no relationship with my temporal temple. It's not worth it to fight the Dao Mountain for him. The grudge between them is too deep. Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestor, Yi Xian has no talent and no virtue. From this moment on, Yi Xian's position as prince will be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man wearing a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a youth. The youth had a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this moment, a timid voice suddenly sounded in the ancestral hall. Everyone looked over and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old. Her two small hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face was sickly pale, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of timidity in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's biological sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother, Yi Xian, is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Great Elder looked coldly at Yi Ling. This is a matter of the clan. Why are you interrupting? Leave. Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged, whether he is crippled or not, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed, You should be flogged 30 times as a warning. The Great Elder coldly replied, Then do it 30 times. Very quickly, Yi clan's guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now, he is fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, Young Master Yi Lang inherits the title of prince. What are you shouting for? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap was heard. Yi Ling's right cheek instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry. She only covered her cheek tightly. Yi Long sized up the guard and asked with a smile, What's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. Subordinate Jianghu greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded, You are very good. After I become the prince, I will need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on. Hearing this, Jianghu was overjoyed. He quickly bowed deeply, I will go through fire and water for the prince. I will not hesitate to die 1,000 deaths. Yi Lang nodded slightly, Drag him out. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Do not show mercy. Understood? Jianghu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Jianghu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes. His face was dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Jianghu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Jianghu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Jianghu felt dizzy, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there. He rushed towards Jianghu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Jianghu's chest. Pooh! Jianghu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, your man? As he spoke, he stomped on Jianghu's face. Jianghu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian ignored Jianghu and walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed, brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Jianghu and kicked Jianghu's head. Pung! Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors above, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides, there were the Yi clan elders. Why? Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned, Yi Ling, what are you doing? The girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the hall, and asked timidly, Great Elder, my brother, Yi Xian, is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly, this is a matter of the clan, what are you interrupting for? Leave. Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged, whether or not he is crippled, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed, you should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Great Elder replied coldly, then do it 30 times. Very quickly, Yi clan guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, this is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he is fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, young master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry, and only covered her cheek tightly. Yi Long sized up the guard and asked with a smile, "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Jianghu greets the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded, "You are very good. After I become the prince, I will need 10 guards. From now on, you will be my guard." Hearing this, Jianghu was overjoyed, and quickly bowed deeply. "I will go through fire and water for the prince, and I will do anything for you." Yi Lang nodded, "Drag him out. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Do not show mercy, understood?" Jianghu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Jianghu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Jianghu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Jianghu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Jianghu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there, and charged towards Jianghu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Jianghu's chest. Pooh! Jianghu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Jianghu's face. Jianghu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Jianghu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Jianghu and kicked Jianghu's head. Pung! Chapter 1908. He wasn't calling for help. The old man from the Yang clan spoke fiercely when he heard Yi Xian. "Since you're not calling for help, then this old man will beat you to death." He waved his right hand as he spoke, "Kill." As soon as he finished speaking, the experts from the Yang clan charged forward. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly took a step forward. Bang! A ray of light instantly drowned the space in front of him, and it didn't take long for a shrill cry to resound from within the ray of light. An expert at the 10th level of the Fate Realm had perished. Meanwhile, Yi Xian swung his sword once more. Bang! An expert at the 10th level of the Fate Realm was blasted 30 kilometers away, and a flying sword pierced through the center of his forehead as soon as he stopped moving. Bang! The expert's body was instantly crushed, and his soul was instantly absorbed by the green profound sword. The old man's face turned extremely unsightly when he witnessed this scene. He realized that the powerhouse at level 10 of the life realm could not do anything to Yi Xian at all. Not only could he not do anything to Yi Xian, but he was also being slaughtered by Yi Xian like a chicken. It was too terrifying. In the distance, Yi Xian was just about to attack again. However, right at this moment, an invisible giant hand suddenly appeared above Yi Xian, and then it slammed down. Yi Xian's expression changed drastically, and he suddenly raised his head and stabbed with his sword. Bang! The ray of light was instantly shattered, and Yi Xian was blasted out of the 9th level of space. When he stopped, his entire body split open, and blood sprayed everywhere. Right at this moment, the space he resided in actually started burning, and it seemed like some powerful force was approaching him. Meanwhile, Xue Tong's voice suddenly resounded in Yi Xian's mind, "Run." Yi Xian didn't hesitate at all. He turned around and vanished into the horizon, and as soon as he vanished, the region he resided in was instantly obliterated. It was forcefully obliterated. Yi Xian's expression changed drastically when he witnessed this scene. Suddenly, the space behind him cracked open, and then a fist smashed down towards him. There was no space-time pressure, nor was there any space-time suppression. It was just pure power. Yi Xian cried out in pain. What he feared the most was this kind of pure power. Unable to dodge, Yi Xian suddenly turned around and blocked with his sword. Sword domain. That fist landed right in front of Yi Xian. Boom! The sword domain instantly shattered. Yi Xian's eyes widened, and he was sent flying hundreds of thousands of feet away. He couldn't care less about his shattered organs, and he turned around and rode his sword, disappearing into the horizon of the starry sky. Not long after he left, the experts from the Yang clan appeared. Meanwhile, a voice resounded. "He's heavily injured. All of you follow him. I'll be there in 2 hours." The leading old man bowed respectfully. "Yes, Patriarch." Having said that, he led the Yang clan and the other experts to chase after them. On the other side, Si Qian looked into the distance. No one knew what he was thinking. Meanwhile, Yao Jun appeared by Si Qian's side, and he spoke in a low voice. "Does the hall master intend to attack?" Si Qian nodded. "The reason Yi Xian's combat strength is so formidable is that sword. That sword is the key. We must obtain that sword." When he spoke up to hear, a strand of cold light flashed through his eyes. Yao Jun was about to say something when Si Qian suddenly vanished on the spot. Yao Jun remained silent for a long time before he sighed softly. He knew that his hall master had been blinded by greed, and he'd only seen the benefits before him while ignoring the dangers that lurked in the shadows. A long time passed before Yao Jun turned around and left. He wasn't returning to the temporal temple, he was fleeing. His intuition told him that if he continued staying in the temporal temple, then a sword might descend from the sky one day, and he'd perish. Yi Xian was flying through the boundless starry sky. At this moment, his injuries could be said to be extremely severe. The shattering of his sword domain was the greatest injury to him. Not only had his body split apart, even his soul had suffered a heavy injury. He wanted to stop and recuperate, but the problem was that there were people chasing after him. At this moment, Xue Tong suddenly appeared beside Yi Xian. She looked at Yi Xian and asked, "How long will it take for you to recuperate?" Yi Xian replied, 15 minutes. Xue Tong licked her candied fruit and said, "Go back to Xiao Ta and recuperate. I'll block them for you." Yi Xian looked at Xue Tong and asked, "Are you sure?" Xue Tong nodded. However, Yi Xian shook his head. "Although you're at the life matrix realm, they're all at the 10th stage. You can't beat them." Xue Tong said, "Lend me some blood." Yi Xian was speechless. Xue Tong suddenly pulled Yi Xian's hand. "Stop wasting time." As she spoke, she suddenly exerted force, and Yi Xian's wrist split open. A stream of blood spurted out, and she sent Yi Xian into Xiao Ta's body. Yi Xian didn't think too much about it and went straight to recuperate. As soon as Yi Xian entered Xiao Ta's body, the experts of the Yang clan appeared here. The old man who led the group looked at Xue Tong and asked, "Where is he?" Xue Tong licked her candied fruit and said, "He abandoned me and ran." The old man's eyes narrowed slightly. "He ran?" Xue Tong nodded. "Yes." The old man stared at Xue Tong for a long time. "Kill." He naturally didn't believe Xue Tong. As soon as he finished speaking, he ordered the experts of the Yang clan behind him to charge forward instead of charging forward. Xue Tong closed her eyes slowly, and Yi Xian's blood suddenly started to boil in her right palm. A moment later, she opened her eyes abruptly. Bang! A powerful bloodline pressure instantly swept through the surroundings, and one of the experts of the Yang clan who was charging at the front didn't even have time to react before he was crushed and obliterated. The old man's expression changed drastically when he witnessed this scene, and he hurriedly retreated. Meanwhile, Xue Tong suddenly took a step forward and smashed her fist forward. Bang! A blood-red fist flashed through the battlefield and smashed directly towards an expert of the Yang clan. That expert's expression changed drastically, and he swiftly raised his arms to block it while space condensed. Bang! As soon as the fist arrived, the space in front of that expert was instantly blasted into pieces. At the same time, he was obliterated by the blood-red fist. Xue Tong was just about to attack again when the old man suddenly pressed his right hand down. Bang! The expanse of space where Xue Tong resided collapsed. At the same time, she fell into the 8th level of the spatial abyss. As soon as she fell into the spatial abyss, the powerful force there started to destroy her. Xue Tong's brows knit together slightly. She wasn't Yi Xian, so she couldn't disregard the spatial abyss. Suddenly, a sword appeared beneath Xue Tong's feet. It was the green profound sword. The green profound sword had taken Xue Tong out of the spatial abyss. The old man's face instantly fell when he witnessed this scene. What the hell is this sword? It's actually able to take someone out of the spatial abyss. Meanwhile, Xue Tong withdrew a candied fruit in an unhurried manner. She licked it, and then she gazed at the old man. I'm out again. Are you angry? The old man from the Yang clan was speechless. Xue Tong glanced at the green profound sword and spoke softly. It's so nice to have a younger sister. Even though she couldn't use the sword, it could help her. Moreover, she wouldn't feel any pressure at all when she had it by her side. Xue Tong suddenly activated Yi Xian's bloodline again, and then she charged forward. The old man's expression changed drastically, and he retreated explosively while another expert in front of him was instantly blasted into pieces. Xue Tong was just about to attack again. Meanwhile, the old man from the Yang clan suddenly opened his palm and pressed it down. The space above Xue Tong instantly warped, and then a powerful wave of spatial pressure swept down and was about to crush Xue Tong. Xue Tong frowned slightly and was about to retreat when Yi Xian's voice suddenly resounded in her mind, "Don't move." As soon as he finished speaking, the green profound sword in Xue Tong's hand trembled slightly. Xue Tong's figure instantly became ethereal when the powerful spatial pressure descended upon her, and she was completely unharmed. The old man's expression instantly became unsightly when he witnessed this scene. Xue Tong glanced at the green profound sword and sighed with praise. I like the feeling of being second generation. Xiao Ta was at a loss for words. Right at this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared here, and it was the hall master of the temporal divine palace, Si Qian. Xue Tong gazed at Si Qian while his brows knit together slightly. Si Qian gazed at Xue Tong. Tell young Master Yi that I want his sword. Give it to me, and I won't attack at all. You should understand what I'm doing if I attack. Si Qian thought for a moment and handed the sword over. Xiao Ta suddenly said, You're handing it over just like that? Xue Tong replied, A wise man submits to circumstances. Understand? Xiao Ta was at a loss for words. Si Qian was stunned when he saw Xue Tong hand the sword over. He was already prepared to attack. However, he hadn't expected that this little girl would actually hand the sword over. Xue Tong suddenly said, Don't you want it? Si Qian glanced at Xue Tong, and then he opened his palm and the sword fell into his grasp. After he confirmed that it was the real deal, Si Qian turned around with the intention of leaving. However, the old man from the Yang clan suddenly obstructed his path. The old man stared fixedly at Si Qian. This sword belongs to my Yang clan. Si Qian grinned. Do you know what realm of cultivation I'm at? The old man's pupils constricted when he heard this, a fate soul. Si Qian laughed savagely. You know that I'm a fate soul, yet you still dare to speak to me like that. Are you an idiot? As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly slapped his palm down. Bang! The old man from the Yang clan didn't even have the chance to react before his body was blasted into pieces. The expressions of the other experts from the Yang clan changed drastically when they witnessed this scene. Si Qian intended to leave after he killed the old man from the Yang clan. Meanwhile, Xue Tong suddenly said, since they're enemies, then why not kill them all? As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and fled. The rest of the Yang clan's experts were stunned. Kill them all? In the next moment, their expressions changed drastically. Wasn't this King referring to them? They wanted to flee, but it was too late. In the distance, Si Qian directly sent out a palm strike, and those Yang clan experts were instantly killed. Si Qian turned to look at where Xue Tong had been standing. At this moment, Xue Tong had already disappeared without a trace. Si Qian hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he did not choose to chase after them. After all, there was no need to do so. The most important thing now was to bring this sword back to the temporal temple. The experts of the Yang clan had died with everlasting regret. P.S. Asking for votes. Chapter 1909. On the other side of the starry sky, Xue Tong stopped. Yi Xian appeared in front of Xue Tong. In fact, his injuries had already healed. Xue Tong looked at Yi Xian. Will you blame me for handing over the sword? Yi Xian smiled. Why would I blame you? Xue Tong looked at Yi Xian for a long time. You're so sneaky, but I like it. Both of them had the same thought. Leaving the Qingxian sword in Yi Xian's possession would be a disaster. Not only would the Dao Mountain come after Yi Xian, but the temporal temple would also come after him. Giving the green profound sword to Si Qian was tantamount to making the Yang clan and temporal temple enemies. This would buy time for Yi Xian. What he needed the most now was time. Yi Xian suddenly asked, Temporal temple's temple lord killed the Yang clan's people? Xue Tong nodded. All of them. Yi Xian smiled. How ruthless. Xue Tong looked at Yi Xian. What are your plans? Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. A moment later, he said in a deep voice, Do you remember the mysterious expert who attacked me? Xue Tong said, I think it was the Yang clan's patriarch. Yi Xian said softly, With my current strength, I can't fight against such an expert. Xue Tong comforted him. Don't be afraid. We have father. If father can't do it, we still have sister. Yi Xian, at this time, Xiao Ta suddenly said, This sister Xue Tong is already infatuated with the second generation. Yi Xian said seriously, Xue Tong, we have to rely on ourselves. Xue Tong nodded. I understand. Unless it's absolutely necessary, we can't call for help. We have to train ourselves. I understand all of this. Yi Xian, Xue Tong took out a stick of tanghulu and licked it. Then he said, Can I ask a question? Yi Xian smiled. What question? Blood. I looked at Yi Xian. Just how powerful is your sister? Yi Xian was about to speak when Xiao Ta suddenly said, Don't ask. You're invincible if you ask. The invincible sister Tianming. Xue Tong asked again, What about his father? The azure-robed man. Xiao Ta laughs, Let me put it this way. Master was once beaten by sister Tianming, do you understand now? Yi Xian wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Damn it, he now felt that it was too dangerous to be with this Xiao Ta. Ever since this fellow had been transformed by Qing'er, he had become so arrogant that he no longer cared about anyone but Qing'er. Xue Tong licked the candied fruit and said, Xiao Ta, this invincible. Xiao Ta immediately said, Invincible in all aspects. There's no opponent. There's nothing in the entire universe that big sister Tianming can't solve with one sword. Yi Xian was speechless. Xue Tong nodded and said, I understand. Yi Xian shook his head, Let's not talk about this. Our top priority is to cultivate. I want. At this point, Yi Xian's face instantly changed. He suddenly turned around and saw a middle-aged man in a white robe standing a few hundred meters in front of him. He and Shuetong didn't know when the middle-aged man had appeared. Both of their expressions turned solemn. The middle-aged man sized up Yi Xian and said with a smile, "I think you must think that my Yang clan should go against the temporal temple, right?" Yi Xian said solemnly, "You're the Yang clan's patriarch." The middle-aged man said with a smile, "Yes. The Yang clan's patriarch, Yang Lian." Yi Xian smiled lightly, "Why did you come to me first?" Yang Lian walked slowly towards Yi Xian, "Because I feel that you're the biggest threat." Yi Xian frowned slightly, "I'm the biggest threat?" Yang Lian nodded, "You're only at the 20th rank, but you were able to take 2 of my attacks head-on. I've never seen such a monstrous genius like you." Yi Xian turned to look at Shuetong, "It's all because you're too outstanding." Shuetong looked at Yi Xian, "We're on the same side. Don't pretend, all right?" Yi Xian, meanwhile, Yang Lian said, "You gave the sword to the temporal temple on purpose because you wanted my Yang clan to fight the temporal temple to the death so that you could reap the benefits. Am I right?" By Yi Xian's side, Shuetong said in a low voice, "This enemy is quite smart. What should we do?" Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "Fists can't solve problems. We have to be reasonable." As he spoke, he looked at Yang Lian and opened his palm. A drop of blood floated slowly in front of Yang Lian, and Yang Lian's eyes instantly narrowed when he saw this drop of blood. Yi Xian said with a smile, "Sir, to tell you the truth, my father is not an average person." Right at this moment, Yang Lian suddenly took a step forward and smashed his fist forward. Yi Xian's pupils constricted. He practically didn't hesitate to grab Shuetong behind him, and then he took a step forward and activated his sword domain. Bang! A fist smashed down. Yi Xian's sword domain trembled violently before it collapsed, but the fist was still there. Yi Xian suddenly raised his arms in front of him, and the first 8 layers of time and space condensed into a space-time wall. Rumble. Yi Xian's arms were blasted apart, and then his figure was blasted flying. Beside him, Crimson Eye looked at Yi Xian, who was sent flying, with a dull look in his eyes. If Yi Xian hadn't pulled her behind him at that instant, then she would have absolutely been unable to resist that punch. Yi Xian flew for over 30 kilometers before he finally stopped, and a strand of blood sprayed from his mouth as soon as he did. Shuetong had just appeared in front of him when she opened her palm, and then the blood that sprayed from Yi Xian's mouth fell into her palm. Shuetong glanced at Yi Xian, and then she stuffed the candied fruit into Yi Xian's mouth. After that, she turned around to gaze at Yang Lian. Yang Lian smiled, "Young man, you showed me your bloodline because you want to tell me that there's someone formidable standing behind you, right?" As he spoke, he shook his head and smiled, "If I saw your bloodline at the beginning, then perhaps I would have considered going against you. But now, enmity has formed between us. Since enmity has formed between us, then we're enemies. The best way to deal with an enemy, especially an extraordinarily monstrous genius, is to eliminate that person before that person can grow. Understand?" As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly vanished on the spot, and then a powerful aura swept through the surroundings and obliterated the space here. A wisp of ferocity flashed through Shuetong's eyes as she stood before Yi Xian, and then she suddenly clenched her right hand. Bang! Yi Xian's bloodline instantly started burning. A moment later, she took a step forward and smashed her fist forward, and a strand of terrifying force swept out from her fist. 2 formidable forces collided head-on in the most forceful manner possible. Rumble. As soon as their forces collided, the space in the surroundings was obliterated and shattered into pieces. Shuetong was instantly blasted flying, and she flew over 30 kilometers away. As soon as she stopped moving, her body shattered into pieces, and only her soul remained. In the distance, Yang Lian glanced at his fist. His fist had completely cracked open, and his bones were exposed. A wisp of a solemn expression flashed through Yang Lian's eyes when he witnessed this scene. He knew that he'd underestimated this human's bloodline. It's absolutely not an ordinary bloodline. Who exactly is this human? A string of questions flashed through Yang Lian's mind. Yang Lian didn't give it any further thought and just gazed at Yi Xian, and he didn't conceal his killing intent at all. It's better for such a monstrous genius to die young. When he thought up to here, Yang Lian took a step forward, and then he suddenly clenched his right fist. In an instant, the space around him had warped, and even the 1st to 8th levels of space had warped. Xue Tong clenched his fist slowly. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, "I'll do it." Xue Tong turned to look at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian grinned, "Enter the pagoda." Xue Tong gazed at Yi Xian, "You'll die." Yi Xian immediately placed Xue Tong into Xiao Ta, and then Xue Tong intended to leave the pagoda but was stopped by Xiao Ta. Xue Tong spoke furiously, "Let me out." Yi Xian paid no attention to Xue Tong, and he gazed at Yang Lian instead. Yang Lian said, "You were born with a 9th level fate chart. Come, let me see how tough your life is." As he spoke, he was about to attack. Meanwhile, Yi Xian's eyes slowly closed while the blood within him started to seethe. Bang! In an instant, a strand of monstrous killing intent and evil energy swept out from the surroundings. Yang Lian frowned when he witnessed this scene. This killing intent is quite unusual. At this moment, Yi Xian, who was in the distance, suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were like a sea of blood. Bloodline activation. At this moment, Yi Xian hadn't activated his bloodline for a very long time, and the powerful killing intent and evil energy it emanated had directly suppressed his mind. Because Xue Tong had unsealed his bloodline in the past. Even though he'd only unsealed it slightly, it wasn't something he could control right now. Suddenly, Yi Xian opened his palm, and then a blood-red sword suddenly appeared in his hand. In the next moment, he vanished on the spot. Hiss! A strand of blood-red light suddenly flashed, and it tore everything in its path apart. A wisp of a cold glow flashed through Yang Lian's eyes. He took a step forward and smashed his fist forward, and a strand of powerful force erupted from his fist like a volcano. It was a head-on collision. Bang! An expanse of blood-red light suddenly erupted, and then the starry sky in the surroundings was obliterated and transformed into a pitch-black spatial black hole. On the other hand, Yi Xian was blasted over 10 kilometers away, but Yang Lian was pushed over 3 kilometers back as well. Yang Lian's expression instantly became ferocious after he stopped moving. At the same time, he was quite shocked in his heart. The energy of this bloodline is actually so terrifying. Yi Xian suddenly walked towards Yang Lian with his blood-red sword in hand. Yang Lian stomped his right foot against the ground, and then a fist suddenly arrived in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian swiftly slashed down with his sword. Bang! The sword light shattered, and then Yi Xian retreated explosively once more. This time, he retreated by almost 30 kilometers. However, Yang Lian had retreated by over 10 kilometers as well. Yi Xian's current strength was sufficient to shake him. Yi Xian was about to attack again when Yang Lian suddenly flipped his right hand. In the next moment, the expanse of space where Yi Xian resided collapsed, and then he was blasted into the 8th spatial abyss. But this time, Yi Xian didn't have the green profound sword. However, Yi Xian was still completely fine. Because the formidable energy of his bloodline had directly resisted the formidable energy within the spatial abyss. Yang Lian's expression was slightly unsightly when he witnessed this scene. "What sort of freak are you?" Meanwhile, a voice suddenly resounded from the side. "Looks like brother Yang Lian needs help." As soon as this voice resounded, a middle-aged man appeared not too far away from Yang Lian. It was the Shao clan's patriarch, Shao Tian. Meanwhile, another voice resounded. "He really does need help." As soon as this voice resounded, an old man appeared on Yang Lian's right. It was the Lin clan's patriarch, Lin Shao. The 3 great leaders of Dao Mountain were gathered here. Right at this moment, a voice suddenly resounded from the side. "Are you bullying the weak? That's not good." The three of them turned around and saw a woman walking over slowly from afar. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.